Okay, I'm gonna call the meeting to order.
We have a couple more people coming up the stairs.
They are welcome.
Thank you.
I'm gonna just admit all these people and hope, here we go, we got
Thank you
video.
so much.
And this meeting is being recorded by the Economic Development Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Great. I am gonna do roll call. Counselor Garrett,
Present.
Counselor Gordon. Here. Counselor Healy. I
Aye.
don't see him in there, but I do have someone in the waiting room. Counselor Minhas. Okay, I do believe some counselors may show up late because there was the pinning ceremony at John's On for Chief Dodge tonight. Okay. So we'll just see if we have minutes. Thank you all for coming tonight. It's exciting when we have this many people for a subcommittee meeting. Sorry. My Wi-Fi is not connected and this is the one I annotated. Okay, we have approval of minutes for August 13th, 2024. I move that we approve the minutes for August 13th.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I am gonna take public comments, because the previous, the public hearing on maybe the issue most of you are here for, but I really don't know, was during the start of the Franklin County Fair Parade. So I know that it might have been hard for some people to attend the public hearing, so I will allow, hi, welcome. So I will allow for everyone to have 4 minutes of public comment tonight to make up for the fact that you couldn't be heard during the public hearing. If that's what you're here to speak on, I'm not sure. If you do want to speak for public comment and you haven't yet, please put your name on the list. If you're online and you'd like to speak for public comment, please put your name and address in the chat box. And it doesn't look like, oh, and it looks like our video is off. Let me try, see, tell me if this works. Yeah, that worked.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So if you're online and you'd like to give public comment, please put your name in the chat box and address. For those who just arrived, I'll give 4 minutes for public comment. Don't feel like you need to use it if you don't. But I know that it was a hard night for some people to attend the last meeting. Oh, yeah, and if anyone needs a chair, we only need 2 chairs in case both counselors come, so take our extras and sit wherever you would like. You can sit at the table with us if you
Might
like.
only be 2 extra or 3 extras.
Yeah. And actually, while we wait for folks to sign up, I will take Susan Wogathic from 45 Forest Ave in Greenfield. You can start it off. I am gonna set an alarm for public comment. I do ask that you stop within a few seconds of the alarm going off. I don't love to cut people off, so just please respect everyone's time. And we are happy to receive written comment if you can't get through it in 4 minutes. So thank you, Susan. You can start us off.
Thank you. Susan Wargaftic, 45 Forest Avenue in Greenfield.
I just want to talk about a couple of things that I know will be coming up at this meeting, and I have a question. One is around the cluster development. Since I haven't had a chance to read the policy, I was wondering if what the size of the lot is for that is required for a cluster development. How big or small is that? Because we shouldn't, my view is that we should not stop small developments of 2 or 3 houses and require them to have 5 acres or whatever it is to be able to have those 2 or 3 houses set aside. In addition, on accessory dwelling units and some changes in the zoning that Counselor Garrett brought to Housing Greenfield yesterday. On the site plan review, we are wondering if it cannot be an automatic, that if there was site plan review, that the neighbors would be notified that that was happening. Right now, that is not the policy. And so we don't, people don't necessarily know if we were to go with the accessory dwelling unit suggestion that is coming from the counselor. We don't know if that would be an opportunity for people to speak. On Chuck Green's idea about mobile homes, the result of our discussion at Housing Greenfield yesterday was that there were just too many questions, that we really need to understand how sewage would work, how water would work, what the responsibilities and liabilities would be for anyone who had had allowed a person to be living in a trailer on their property. And also that it seems to us that this is just an ADU with wheels, and as such, we ought to look at it in that context. So those are the big questions that I wanted to ask, and I thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you, Susan. And I'm just gonna go to the next person online. Rob Catlin, 31 West Street.
Yes, hello. I'm not that familiar, with the agenda yet, so I'm not really prepared to make other than a couple of comments. I appreciated the former speakers, Ms. Wolgaftik's request that clustered developments have reduced lot size, and for accessory dwellings to have neighbors notified for the site plan review. I think that is an excellent idea. And regarding the temporary or camper type dwellings, I have a lot of reservations about that, both for health and safety and for just the attractiveness of our neighborhoods. So that's all I have to say at this point. Will there be a later opportunity to speak, perhaps?
There will not be a later opportunity to speak in this meeting. What happens in this meeting, I guess might be useful for everyone to know, is that we will take a vote on this order to change the language for zoning ordinances. All our vote does is make a recommendation to the council, and then it goes to full council, which is next Wednesday at 6 or 6:30. I never 6:30. And you are more than welcome to come next Wednesday at 6:30 and give public comment there. You can do the same thing, sign up. I think it's 3 minutes. And you can also send your comment to all counselors before there will be a vote. It's on the agenda for next Wednesday.
So, excuse me, is there some way I could become familiar with this zoning ordinance? It's one big package?
It is, well, this zoning ordinance does not include the ADU.
Right.
It only includes the cluster development. So if you go to the greenfield.gov website and you scroll down in the calendar, there's a link to our full agenda that has the entire packet that I have in front of me. And that has the updated language, because the language was updated since the joint hearing on the 5th. So If you read the joint hearing agenda language, some of that language has been updated per the discussion. But it's all in the agenda for this meeting, which is on the calendar on the city website.
Thank you.
Thank you. There was one other thing I was gonna say. Oh, just so that maybe it will hasten some of what people are worrying about is that for the cluster developments, which is what we are voting on tonight, people are worried about neighbors being notified, like the abutters having notification. That is built in because the way that this cluster development would work is that it would be like a subdivision. And in order for a subdivision to be created, abutters are get notice. So I knew that question came up a lot at the last meeting. So I just want folks to know that the cluster development, which is the only thing we are voting on tonight, abutters would be notified if that process was started next to your property. Okay, so we are gonna move on. There's nobody else online, but if anyone online would like to speak, you are welcome to. Put your name in the comments and I will get to you. Jane Alexander,
Yeah, I live on Barton Road.
you're welcome to sit or you can stand there, whichever you're more comfortable with.
So the proposed zoning, change as far as the trailers and the campers. To me, that is a concern. I think the gentleman, Mr. Selden, was talking about how, the attractiveness of that might deter from certain neighborhoods. And personally, I think if somebody was gonna put a trailer on the back of their property and it's abutting another property that, you know, I just think that that would be something that would be disturbing to the property owners. I think it would detract from their value. So if you're gonna sell a house, how do you sell a house if somebody's trailer is parked in the back of their house right next to your property?
Thank you.
Do we need people to come up here for the?
Mike
because-
doesn't-
Oh,
the mic doesn't reach back.
Yeah, I think we will ask folks to come up because folks online might have a hard time hearing public comment.
That was audible for me, by the way.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
You had good projection. Nancy Key,
Good evening, everyone. I'm grateful to be here and have this opportunity to talk to you about housing and a couple of things. I have been a resident, very happy and grateful in a multi-generational neighborhood. I live at 230 High Street. I am an avid and active volunteer in town with Stone Soup Kitchen. In the month of August, I nailed 31 hours, that along with my parish, St. James and Andrew. I also make a very concerted effort to know my neighbors. I have 2 golden retrievers and am well known. I've extended myself to people all around the neighborhood because I did not know a soul when I moved here 2 years ago, September, and I came down with COVID that day. When I read the article concerning the active ideas and something in particular that the assessor and resident, Mr. Get your last name, Green wrote, I tried to come up with a metaphor. I tried to come up with a poem. I tried to come up with something to make it lighthearted. I tried to squelch my feelings. The anger that I had in the tone and the lack of mindfulness from this resident to put on us as an obstacle, people who would not be in favor of this would have biases and discrimination, would think that going to the health department for help to have the facilities, trailers or encampments, camps monitored. I myself have had to call the health department 3 times in less than 2 years. I called the CEO of the hospital concerning in my neighborhood, rats, mosquitoes, flooding, cigarette butts. The only one who actively got back to me was the CEO of the Franklin Hospital. It is absolutely outrageous for anyone to write an article and consider us the opponents, people who would oppose an ordinance without knowing who he, she, them, her, they, he are. That is outright wrong. To have one individual put an amendment to an ordinance and to have it go this far and to aggravate so many people and concern them. This is my major investment, is my home. There is no way that these prices will increase considering the other obstacles that we're facing when we're living in Greenfield, which is the county seat, which is bringing all kinds of people in. And I lived in Amherst for over 20 years. I was in the recovery movement. I am in the recovery movement. I have been in social services for 50 years. I'm not blind to this. I've had somebody from my church call me Monday. She's houseless. After 17 years, she has unsheltered housing. I am not talking out of nowhere, but this is it's lacking mindfulness, it's lacking corroboration, and there's no sense of community building and what's going on, and I resent it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, we have Alice Timmons. I'll just ask you to say your name, and address. If you would.
Okay, 106 Haywood Street, Alice Timmons. I'm kind of Nancy's neighbor. And I read that article and I have to agree with her. It was kind of really off-putting. Our major concern is housing. It's a big issue for most every resident here, but quality housing, housing that gives somebody dignity and housing that does not like put them in a precarious position. It just amazes me that we've got a couple of major initiatives getting ready to go through and have some large conversations on these issues. And this is not really a solution. This is not thought out and it's not even functional, honestly. Now, maybe when we get to December and, there might be a version of this that might be a stopgap, but that's not a permanent change in zoning. Let's see if we can try something. And that's something that comes after larger conversations, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want folks to know as a reminder, the only thing we are voting on tonight that's going to council is the cluster developments, which does not include the campers and does not include the ADU, okay? So the way it works is if a topic is brought up for discussion, if a constituent brings a topic forward, it goes to a committee first, which is where it's discussed. So you guys are here at the ground floor of these discussions. Nothing's moved. Just so everyone's sure, the only thing we're voting on tonight is cluster development. Joan Pyfrom, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong.
You said it right. My name is Joan Pyfrom. I live on Maple Street, the upper end of Maple Street. I know we have a housing problem and it's really, really out of hand and we need to do something. What I'm concerned about is if you have a trailer or anything on your property, I'm concerned about liability, as Susan said. I'm concerned about home insurance. Is our home insurance supposed to cover this trailer or whatever on our land? What about water and sewer, as Susan said? The electricity that's going to be needed to heat that particular dwelling and, run appliances and everything else. I'm very concerned about that. I bought my house later in life. I'm still paying mortgage. I'm just concerned about a liability and what if the people that are on your land are someone that you eventually don't get along with. I mean, how is all that going to work out? And how many of these trailers or these different homes going to be in Greenfield and how long a period of time is this going to happen? I mean, there's so many uncertainties here. And I was mulling over this in my mind today thinking, what if I had somebody on my land? I mean, I have a small property. And I mean, God forbid anything happened, like there was a fire in the trailer, would it spread to my house? I don't know. And, you know, different things like that is what I'm really concerned about. I'm still paying mortgage. I'm worried about taxes. If taxes go up on, you know, because I have a trailer on my land, what happens? I mean, I do Sunday sandwiches at the same church that Nancy does. And we fed 292 people a Sunday ago. It breaks my heart to see these people not knowing where their next meal is going to come from. We need to do something, yes. I just don't think this is the answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Make sure, we don't have it. If anyone online does want to give public comment, you can put your name and address in the chat. Gary Roy,
Hi, my name is Gary Roy. I live at 34 Prospect Street. I just have a couple questions, actually. All right, so you get somebody, you invite them to be on your land with their trailer. Will they have, what kind of rights will they have? Will they have like squatters' rights because they're on your land? Can they just stay? Or how about if the trailer changes hands with somebody you don't know? How do you get rid of them? Like anything else that's very difficult. Who's gonna inspect these trailers for habitability? I mean, you can't just mandate, say people can live in a trailer in Greenfield and then what, not be liable for the fact that it's in an uninhabitable? Just wondering, will the trailers need to be insured? I'd say probably. And as for appearances, I think that a trailer is much more invasive looking than a tent would be. How about someone abandons their trailer? How do you move it? Get their permission to move it? I mean, there's lots and lots of stuff that's, I don't know. All right, so ordinance, zoning ordinance 11, Article 7, Section 11 was created for a good reason. Why should it be thrown out? Obviously, somebody put it there for a reason. And I also have to say that this is a temporary measure which will not solve the housing crisis underlying causes. All it'll do is just drag the city down visually and economically. So I have to say.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mitch Spate,
Evening, Chief. First of all, what's being presented, it's a bad script. Okay, this is a seriously bad script. And for the council or to present this, I don't think he's done due diligence. We are not Fairfield County, nor are we the Tony communities of Lenox or Williamstown. Okay, I respect my open space as well as my abutters and my neighbors. I enjoy walking through the city of Greenfield and absorbing the fragrances of whether it's Cheonanthus, Virginiana, or Heptacodium myconortis. Again, I spoke last week and I'd like to just reiterate some of the comments that I made. One, I note that one of the purposes of open space by law is to encourage the permanent preservation of an open space. It seems contradictory to the city to be pushing new open space development regulations while at the same time crowding outside and backyards with accessory dwelling units. 3, in section 200-39 F1 of open space bylaw. It talks about lot size and says that how many units they can be put on a parcel is based on net acreage of the parcel. We should use that same parcel size principle when determining whether a parcel is qualified for an accessory dwelling unit or not. 4, Section H1 of the open space bylaw is called dimensional requirements. And it states, the area of the tract to be developed shall not be less than 5 contiguous acres. We should use that same principle and apply it to the accessory dwellings. Residential parcels less than a certain size should not be eligible for ADU because of limited open space on such lots. 5, lots of less than a half acre might be an appropriate dimensional limit for parcels to be considered for ADU. I hope the EDC will remember we need to encourage the preservation of open space on lots that may have a larger home in a small yard. It does not help property values to have an ADU squeezed on a small lot with a large principal dwelling and little open space. I'd like to end it with, I don't know if you're familiar with Roger and Hammerstein's song, Everybody's Got a Home But Me. I think people desire to own a home. And again, I brought it to your attention prior to this, that there's legal structuring, and that has not been put in the equation yet. You keep pimping landlord-tenant relationships, and that's dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
Right there. I'm gonna move us online for Stephanie Duclos.
I have to pull over, hold on. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we hear you good. Do you want me to come back to you or are you good now?
Yeah, that would be better. I'm just trying to make it home. I'm literally about 300 yards.
Okay, I'll come back to you then.
Thanks.
This is great. Thank you. We have Joan Marie Jackson.
Good afternoon, Economic Development Committee. Hello, neighbors, everyone. I'm so glad to see you here. This is really good. Okay. Well, I'm going to reiterate a few notes that I shared with the planning board and the EDC meeting from September 5th. And the purpose that I'd like to stress is to permanently preserve our open spaces. And if you imagined any of these scenarios with the detached ADUs or trailers or campers, how much more compact and how it takes away the beauty and freedom of enjoying the properties we've invested in. I'd like you to really take that to heart. To permanently preserve open spaces. ADUs can complicate the sale of a house in the future by raising the total assessed value of a property, putting it further out of reach for a family seeking to own a home, creating problems also for the renters when the house changes ownership and the new owner seeks to evict all tenants to raise rents. A proliferation of ADUs has implications also for our water and sewer capacity and our school budget as well. Detached ADU have to be hooked up to city water and sewer where it exists. And if we think about putting trailers or campers, and I've heard in some of the reports to run a hose from one's dwelling into the camper, I don't think people invested money for their best interests to do that on their property. And it really doesn't do the right thing towards people who would like to have a home. Let's give them a chance with some dignity too. Not campers, not tents. We have to try harder. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Al Norman. And Stephanie, I'll come back to you next.
Good evening, committee members. My name is Al Norman, Grinnell Street in Greenfield. I wanted to use this opportunity to state that a number of us will be filing a zoning amendment in the near future as citizens that protects open space on small residential lots. Just as the open space plan you're talking about tonight protects parcels 5 acres and larger. We think that personal space, the open space, is important whether it's large or small. It will be part of the site plan review process. Because as you probably all know, special permits are now dead for these accessory dwelling units. It's gone. It's not anyone in Greenfield that did that. It's the governor and the state legislature. If you don't like it, talk to them because they are the ones who are telling you that they know better than you. Number 3, one of the approval guidelines for our current site plan review process is the provision of open spaces. This will be similar to the open space ordinance that you're reviewing tonight. The site plan review already requires applicants to provide a description and percentage of their open space. So that's already in the open space, in the section on, who is that?
That's not your time. Sorry, it's not your time.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's the description of open space is already required in site plan review. We're going to add stronger language than that. We're going to propose lot size limits and dimensional limits because some of the lots are more appropriate than other lots, just as in cluster development. My house sits on 0.3 of an acre. There is no room for an accessory dwelling unit. If I came to you and told you I wanted one, you should tell me no. It's too crowded. There's not enough space. And my neighbors would suffer for it. And right now, under the ordinance, they have no rights at all. No rights at all. I don't care if you notify them that there's a hearing coming. They can come and be told you have no rights to appeal because this is not a special permit anymore, which I advocated for and got in 2020. For the past 4 years, we've had a special permit. So what we're proposing will have lot size limits and dimensional limits under site plan review, just like cluster developments do in what you're looking at tonight. We will also, this is important, we will also prohibit ADUs from being used as Airbnbs. Very unpopular. I talked to folks in Shelburne Falls. They're all upset about this. They don't want somebody, a landlord coming, buying up a house and then building an ADU in the back and using both properties for Airbnb. Very disruptive. Every day somebody's changing on the property. And like tonight's proposed open space ordinance, our purpose is to quote, this is one of the quotes from the purposes of the ordinance you're looking at, to encourage the permanent preservation of open space. Because we're not, God didn't make any more open space. Whatever we've got is all we've got. I don't want to squander it on dwellings that are not suitable in many cases for long-term living. I want people to have a pathway to ownership, and I want them to stay where they are for a while and not be constantly wondering about moving on. And finally, I just want to point out that the land use table in the ADU ordinance that you'll be looking at needs to be corrected because ADUs are not as of right in any non-residential zone. So commercial, no. Industrial, no. The only place you can have an ADU as of right is in residential zones. So I want to just conclude by saying that this is a very important issue to people in Greenfield. People believe that the housing crisis is going to strangle us all. Honestly, we're going to hear this week that there are, if we could open 45 units a year for the next 10 years, we would have most of our housing problems taken care of. And I believe that's very feasible and possible. We are not facing a need for 600 units today. We're facing 600, 400, 500. I've seen all kinds of different figures is over the next 10 years. Please keep that in mind. This is not an urgent, let's grasp for any straw we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie Duclos.
Hi, Stephanie Duclos, Chapman Street. Thank you for letting me speak. I just got the updated version today of the ordinance because there were some corrections that were being made, so I haven't had the opportunity. I just got home from the chief swearing in. But I did have some concerns because I did listen to all the planning board meetings up until the draft came to you guys. So they did a reduction. My understanding is from the 100% protection, then they reduced it down to 50, and that's where they're going to start their calculation on where their density bonuses will come in. So my understanding of it, and maybe it's an unclear understanding, maybe you guys can correct that, because there was a lot of the ordinance that was taken out, struck and through. You know, the density, you know, there's a number that you don't care anymore. There used to be a limit to that. But the density bonus it reduces the amount of lot sizes that you guys can, you know, developers can build on, which means, so they'll protect a slight piece of grass and they'll include the wetlands in their count as total. So it's really confusing to most people. And I know that Allison Gage had come to speak at this meeting to kind of clarify some of that confusion. But we also have to look at what are we reducing it from? I mean, those were the suggestions that came from the planning board, but those came from original suggestions that were actually talked about in the planning board hearing before that. So there are more changes that occurred between the conversations right up until now. And so I just got the updated newest draft today. Kathy Scott had sent it to me. So I will be speaking further to this on the city council floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Gonna make sure there's nobody else on there. Okay, Pamela Goodwin.
Hi, my name is Pamela Goodwin. I live at 54 High Street. I've been blessed with HUD housing after I sold my house to my son. I didn't read the scathing article that people are very upset about. I joined Housing Greenfield 6 years ago, and I participated in every meeting, was sent to zoning board, was sent to planning board. I work with the Massachusetts Coalition Against Homelessness statewide. I also work with Pamela Schwartz, Western Mass Coalition, the network fighting for housing. So I also became homeless on purpose because I had a very cruel landlord, was dealing with restraining orders, and I was losing my health, my sanity, my health, all of it, working with doctors. And so I know what it's like to sleep in a car at an elderly age and to have no place to be until I got in a shelter, which was no fun either. So my viewpoint is, and I'm not trying to shame people, but I want to be the other side of the coin. I think there's a lot of stigmatism, always. When you're unhoused, people judge. I know a lot of people that either have been evicted or planning or on the verge of being evicted. And I had a woman who constantly talked to me about trailer trash, constantly. And when I was a little girl, we lived in a mobile home in northern Texas. I do happen to know that Bernardston has a very nice mobile park. Those people seem to be pretty happy there. I don't think the Bernardston people are thinking that it's wrecked their ambiance. I also know of a mobile home park that's very nice where people downsized from a larger home and they lived on the outside of Northampton. It might even be considered Hatfield. So I would just think, and I know this, I apologize, this is only about cluster houses, but we have got to start thinking outside of the box. If you think that all of these corporate people are going to run in here and spend all this money and give us the housing that we've been waiting for years,
It's not happening, and it's not happening fast enough. And so I would like to think that there, but for the grace of God, go me, not again, but like when people say, it's wrecking my assessor, it's gonna, that's gonna, an ADU is usually an in-law apartment so that an elderly person can be taken care of. It doesn't knock the property value down. They're just trying to house someone who's a parent. That's what the purpose of the ADU originally was. So I'm just wanting to say, you got these archaic zoning laws. Yes, we all love open spaces. That's why we live in Western Mass. But if you have archaic zoning laws that need to be looked at, then I agree with Mr. Norman. Think carefully about what it can be, what it can't be. Nobody's going to run a hose and tell everybody to drink out of a hose because it tastes like crap when you have that kind of water. So I think people kind of go, a little crazy about it. And I think of all my friends that don't have the weed thing, that they were all going to move out and they were, the big fence, they got a lawyer, they fought that, they won it. And they're real happy over there now. They're not dealing with this putrid smell of growing grass up there, that kind of grass. So anyway, I just think it's time to look closely and try to help the people. And I agree with Wahab. It'd be great if everybody could afford a house. I don't think that's the option. You've got rents going up, the eviction rate is way higher, and it's not stopping. So we have to think about what we want to do with these people. It's bigger than feeding them. And some of them will never decide to take a house or an apartment because they have other mental health issues. I'm for boarding houses back, and I have talked about that before. All these empty houses, they need services, and that's what I want to say. So I just would hope that people would go, we got to do something, because it is an urgent thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina Campbell.
Good evening, Gina or Regina Campbell, 86 Highland Avenue in Greenfield. I'll just briefly say I certainly appreciate that we have needs for housing in Greenfield that need to be addressed. I basically vehemently oppose the idea of trailers and any other kind of devices on our properties. I think we need to look to the mayor's office, our counselors, city experts, other housing experts, bring in the people that matter most on those kind of decisions, also our DPW, our police, our fire, our schools, to make really solid decisions about housing for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis Close.
Hey, everybody. Dennis Close. I live at 25 Highland Avenue. I agree with a lot of the comments that I've heard tonight. And I guess when I think of Greenfield, if I start strategically at the top, somebody mentioned quality housing. I think that should be our focus. I agree with Mitch, Joanne, open spaces that they talked about. I agree with Al on the ADUs. I think we need to be very careful, and we really need to think about this strategically, holistically. And, campers or trailers, there's no place for it. It's not the character of the city. It's not what most of us moved here for. And if you've lived here your whole life, it's probably not what you're looking for either. So we need a common sense approach. The city's addressing it, right? We're looking at other alternate measures now. We've got other buildings we can repurpose. We can work with builders and we can drive incentives. Let's make sure that we're keeping the strategy in mind and we're not just cherry picking things that might be more tactical to address something that's perceived as a short-term need that's not going to meet what we want long-term. So I'm asking, and I think I'm premature here, but in terms of campers or trailers, I think you can tell I'm saying, please don't change anything. And I really do want to see us focus on the open space and the ADUs like it's been talked about. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Diane Colleen.
Good evening. Diane Killeen. I live at 708 Country Club Road, but in the Brookside neighborhood. I've lived in Greenfield all my life, and I appreciate how we help people who are in need. But there are ways to go about it. One of the things that has bothered me in my neighborhood directly involves housing. We have had an empty home due to family disruption and death since 2017. The town knows about it. It is not foreclosed on. It's in who knows whose hands because we can't get much information. It is a deplorable mess. And every time I have the opportunity when someone comes to inspect it, I talk about it with them. We're getting nowhere. The woman who lived there for a very long time and cared for the property. It is now a health hazard and it could be someone's home. And that's, this is all about housing and open space. It's a lovely neighborhood where people care about one another. Everyone walks or rides bikes. And I raised my children there. I would love to see another family be able to take that house. We have them all over Greenfield that are becoming uninhabitable. We could look at that as a city and do something about getting people in to rehab these homes and make them livable. There was one on Plantation Circle for years. And now someone came in and made it habitable and it's being occupied. They're paying taxes. So the other thing is, and I don't want to rat anyone out, but I also know that there are people living in trailers in backyards that are not registered. They may not live there 365 days a year, but they have been living there periodically as what we're here to say should not be happening in Greenfield. So we need to shore up our bylaws. We need to take action step by step to help people become more housed and to enjoy the Greenfield that all of us really appreciate. So that's my thing. Didn't intend to speak, but all I kept thinking about was this home that is now uninhabitable because of neglect and nobody taking the action to get it rectified. Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anybody from the public who hasn't spoke who would like to? Online or yes? You just say your name and where you live, please.
My name is Patty and I live on Glenbrook Drive. My background is in my education is in ecological design and planning, and I work in ecological land care. I am generally in favor of clustered housing and development, and I'm just a bit concerned just because I haven't really read through everything yet, and it sounds like there are a lot of questions remaining. I'm concerned about speculative development pressures because if people can build, they will. And I am also concerned that I'm not sure that our land use is as creatively used as it could be. I think we have a lot of room for development there. I think the way that we manage land needs to change drastically. And I think we need to be really strategic in thinking about how we are best using our landscape for certain things, for certain redeveloping local industries, managing land in commons. Neighbors might like to do that. They might like neighborhood scale development is something that I think I would enjoy. Living far out on the edge of Greenfield, like I would like to not have to drive into town. And I just want to make sure that before we open the floodgates to new kinds of development, as important as they are, that we are taking really good stock of what the land is used for, what it can be used for, and how those can still serve to support ecological function and sustain us in a more sustainable way in the future, which is going to be incredibly difficult. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I'm Marco Dotto, 29 Prospect Street. So thanks, because I think your hearts are in the right place. No, you're doing the right thing. You're devoting your time, effort, and energy to trying to make.
I can't hear you.
Okay, you're trying to make the town better. I'm gonna ask, and I'm being quiet because I'm gonna ask some ignorant things, and it comes from ignorance, okay? And this is, I've only been in the town for a quarter of a century, so I'm still a wild-eyed outsider. I don't, okay. From where I sit, like Greenfield has lost population. I know there might be a snapshot where it's gained, but it's lost population over the last 20 years, okay? And then here's the other thing is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And I think if you can explain this to me, you can explain it to everybody. All housing in Greenfield, from my perspective, is affordable housing. You know, I came here from, East Long Meadow. I rented an apartment for $700, and then I bought a house for $180 at a time when the median house price in Massachusetts was almost $4, you know? It's ignorant. I said it was ignorant, but it's all housing is affordable. So what is the concept? I think the concept is we see the people like out in the town common, we say, man, these poor people, we want to help them, but they can't afford anything. So there is no affordable level of affordable housing that's going to be created that's going to help them out. And what's probably going to happen is you're going to have a cluster development, and the rents and such are, you're just going to have a new population go in there, and then those people are still going to be left out in the cold. Again, I don't know the answers, and that I'm admitting to my ignorance. What is the problem you're trying to solve? And I think once you kind of articulate that, particularly to people like me, we might buy into what it is you're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, hold on. Someone in the chat now. Ryan Whitney, Chapman Street.
He's going to speak on mine.
Okay.
Yeah, my speaker kind of is messed up. No, I just like when we allow this in, I see all the water breaks in town and all the sewer problems we have. We don't even have those under control, and we're going to add to these systems as we're pumping all our sewerage way out to almost Boston already and paying extra money for it. We're going to add to that burden. I just don't get what we're doing with these cluster developments before we have the infrastructure to handle even what we're proposing. So that's just one point that I didn't hear too much about that I would like to be addressed when we're like changing our zoning. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
I want to say something.
Yes.
After that.
Can you say your name and?
Yeah. Manny Hassett, 21 Leonard Street. I have to say, I'm a bit bowled over by that last gentleman talking about affordable housing. I don't think that's true. And it goes down levels and levels and levels. I spoke a long time ago at a meeting talking about why restaurants in different minorities or majorities, people, ethnic people couldn't get a place in Greenfield and bring all kinds of culture and the mayor at that time said he had nothing to do with how property owners adjust their what they were going to charge. So I know working people now that can't afford to get an apartment. I don't know anybody. I lucked out. It was homeless or get a house. So I got a house. My mother left me a little bit of money. But it's so much deeper than that. There are no jobs. We're losing, look at Main Street. We're losing Main Street. People given the opportunity, I believe, would like to work have a place to live, share with their families. We're community people, all of this, I believe, inside. We want that. It isn't happening. And we've lost a lot of businesses in town. And people can't afford, people come here, sure, people come from other parts of the state and buy up our houses. And then I know that there was a thing where 3,000 houses were bought. If you wanted to make a profit, this is what you do. You invest with these people that have brought up the 3,000 houses that are putting the houses so high that the ordinary person can't have a home. So I've come up with a couple of ideas to really put some investment into Greenfield that would bring businesses into Greenfield, but it hurts me to hear that because there are a lot of people that work and want to have an apartment. They can't afford it. I would be out on the street. If I didn't buy my house, when I bought my house and my mother didn't leave me a little bit of money, I'd be on the street. I don't make much Social Security. My Social Security is in God. That's what I call my Social Security and my community. They're my community, but it's a so much deeper problem. People need a place, even if it's just a little place, to be able to get out of the elements, to have some food. I mean, it's such a deeper issue. I wanted to wait until the end because I really wanted to take in what other people were thinking and feeling. I care about this community deeply. And I hope we can come up with a way, I can't influence what big property owners, business owners, they'd rather collect money for whatever break they have for having their building empty than having a place here. So we have a deep need of housing for people that work and are in a community and that think of the people underneath us. I came to you homeless, I came to you hungry, I came to you without any clothes and you turned your back on me. It's not, everything looks bad. Oh, that looks bad. I don't want it in my neighborhood. I have a tiny little house and I just appreciate, I can feel you really listening to what's going on here. We care about our community, so I hope we can make some changes and that people can be housed in business and people that are working can actually afford to live here. That's all. And thank you very much for letting me share my feelings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, my name is Amy Kagling. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Greenfield. I lived in Northampton. But just because it's so relevant to all of this conversation that's happened tonight, I wanted to invite all of the counselors and all of you Thursday at 5:30 at the John Zahn Center. We're going to be presenting the results of the housing study that my department has been working on, and it's actual data about what is happening in Greenfield and what the picture looks like for the future, and a conversation about what we want to prioritize for housing and tools that we can and can't effectively use. So I would welcome all of this energy and input at that meeting as well, not to put another meeting on your calendar, but Thursday, 5:30, John's on.
And
Thank you.
online, right? That
It's
meeting will be
hybrid,
online.
yes. So John's on or hybrid, it's on the city calendar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public? Yes.
I think this is great. It sort of seems like a brainstorm.
Can you just say your name? and-
Sure, I'm Suzanne Glavaki, live on Madison Circle. And I just want to say something really radical. And I don't know the solution, but I just thought I'd throw it out here since we bought a home 20 years ago. First, we had our small house in Conway Street, and then we were able to get to Madison Circle after 16 years. Been there for 20 years. Of course, in the last 5 years, it's doubled in value. I didn't expect that. I don't think it's right. But there I have all this wealth. And is anybody thinking about that end of it? It's sort of like how, for me to sell it for what it's worth right now. No, I couldn't buy it. I couldn't buy it right now. And most of the people, that I know couldn't buy it. And a couple of houses down, somebody just came in from Denver and bought the house. So land trust? I mean, I don't know how I'd like my kids to get something out of it, I might need to buy another house. But, I don't need the value that's there right now. Because I'm not into making a ton of money. It's not, who needs all that money? Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. But, I don't know if there's a way to do a land trust where you can sell it for a reasonable amount, and then the next owner has to sell it for a reasonable amount, and who figures all that out? But since it seems kind of like a brainstorm, I just thought I'd throw that out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yeah. Yes.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Sorry, just say your name.
Yeah. Sarah Brown, I'm at 112 Stone Farm Lane. And just wanted to mention that if anyone's curious, I live in a new housing co-op and community land trust in Greenfield. And I would love to talk to anyone about like community controlled housing that is affordable, because I think that can be a really good model and complementary with all these issues that we're working.
Thank you. Anybody else? Are you sure? Once we move on, there is not a space for public comment. Oh, here we go. Oh, and hold on, I have people in the waiting room. Let me make sure they don't talk too. This first, oh, and Susan, I see now you, I will give you one more minute since you didn't use all your time.
Okay, I just wanted to mention on the cluster development that there are a number of incentives that are being given for different kinds of development. There is not, however, an incentive for providing accessible housing. And when we talk about the problems of housing in Greenfield, the need for accessible housing is one of the greater questions that we have to follow. And I would just like it if included in the cluster housing list of various various enhancements to be able to have someone have a cluster development if there could also be a similar one for accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Did any citizens participating in this meeting send in emails?
Maybe I got 4 or 5 emails on this.
Maybe read?
Do we have them on the public record?
They'll be in the public record.
They are in the public.
Yeah,
record.
they are in the
Yeah.
public record. I'm not gonna read them tonight because I need to watch the debate with my almost 18-year-old who is very excited about this election. So I'd like to be home by 9. Does anyone else want to speak? Okay. Before I move on to the next topic.
Can I just say?
Yes.
To that, please know that we do read emails.
Oh, yeah.
We, as far as I know, all of the counselors read all of the emails that we receive. I certainly do. So please know that even if you don't speak, but you sent an email, we hear you too. And thank you for making that effort.
Absolutely, yes. And I'll just reiterate, our full council meeting is next Wednesday. That's where this will go to the full council floor and will be voted on or tabled, as we often do with contentious issues. And so I would encourage you to come to that meeting and to give public comment and to email your counselors. I guess for those, I can't really like interface with people, but it's great to see so many people here. I'm the counselor for precinct 5, so I did note where folks were living, and I'm happy to talk with folks in my precinct about this issue more, not during a public meeting, if you want it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said you would either vote on it or table it. What happens when you table it? How long does that?
Yeah. So
Ether.
it doesn't go into the ether. we review what sits on the table at our committee chairs meeting, which happens every month. So every month, I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee, and every month I come to this table with the chairs of all the other committee, Ways and Means, Community Relations, Appointments and Ordinances. Is that it?
That's up.
And we all come together and we make our agenda for each city council meeting. And so anything that got tabled the month before, we then decide in that meeting, does it go back to committee and get more discussion? Or does it move forward to council and get voted on? For right now, it's on our agenda to be discussed if the council will make a recommendation tonight and say, the Economic Development Committee recommends that we vote in the affirmative or against this ordinance moving forward. And then the council does or doesn't take that into consideration. The idea is that we did all the discussion here. We heard from a lot of the public. We discussed the pertinent issues. And then the council takes that with whatever grain of salt they take it with, and we rediscuss it or not at the council meeting. If it gets tabled, I mean, I think things can sit on the table indefinitely. I don't know, we don't have a parliamentarian here and I'm not that deep into the process, but I'm deep enough to know that I'm not supposed to go back and forth with you and answer questions. So, I will just say, like, for folks who are very concerned about this, the next step is that you come to the council meeting and you email your counselors. And that is how you get your voice heard and on the record for whatever way you want. That is for the cluster development issue only. The ADU issue and the camper issue, we're just at the discussion phase of that in this meeting. So what will happen with those two issues is that we'll discuss them tonight. And then at the next committee chairs meeting, we'll decide, which is the first Tuesday of October, we will decide, will that move forward to be voted for a recommendation from this committee in our October meeting here? And then we would vote that forward for the October council meeting, full council meeting, which is always the third Wednesday of the month at 6:30.
Yeah, could I just say a few things? First off, thank you everyone for showing up, regardless of what your opinions are on that issue. You can come and speak about literally anything in public comment, right? And I, as elected representative, and many of my colleagues might disagree, and because it's, we have a topic at hand and that's what you should discuss about. But the point is, I will always try to make the avenue for dialogue and discussion and the public's participation at the forefront. You can talk about anything. And so you can do that at subcommittees, but also definitely please come and do that at the full council meeting. If you care about the cluster stuff, if you care about the ADU, if you care about the camper, let your voice be heard. Because the more you can do that, when we see an actual face, when we see somebody taking time out of our busy schedules, out of our social lives to come and speak, that means a lot to us. So anyone who wants to, please definitely do come, regardless of what your opinions are on the issue. And again, thank you.
We can speak, but if we ask a question, when do we get some kind of an answer?
Yeah.
Not necessarily the decision that you make, but what happens if it passes? What kind of, if it passes, am I obligated to, have a trailer on my land? That's kind of what I'd like to know.
So if you have questions about anything, I just always urge anyone to email their counselor directly. I have people who email me and just say like a one-liner and don't want, I had someone email me the other day and say have you thought about voting for Ross Perot? And I was like, not this time. But so you email your counselor and and you can ask any question. And I will say, I try my hardest to direct the person and connect them over email. to the person that would answer the question directly. I also, like, the way that public comment often works for me is if I write down good questions and points that people have while they're making public comment, I either try to find those answers or I bring them up as discussion points when we have the discussion. A thing that often happens is that we get through the public comment and everyone from the public leaves because you've already been here for an hour and 15 minutes. And our meeting's gonna go until like 9 o'clock tonight at least. So sometimes in the discussion, those things get answered and and like a lot of times I will say, like, people read an article. I didn't read the article. Sorry. I went back to work this week, so I didn't read the article, so I have no idea what people are heated about, but other than like reading the presentation we're gonna see tonight. But sometimes people read an article and it's all respect to the reporters in the room. It doesn't have the full context or the full picture or answer those questions that are going to be pertinent. So I do just encourage people, like, communicate with us. I'm actually surprised sometimes, like, when people come to the meeting all heated and I'm like, I've literally never heard your name or seen you or anything, and you live in my precinct and you're very angry about this. Like, just, I loved hearing all these perspectives tonight. So, and as Councilor Minhas said, you can always come to public comment and speak. I will say there is some committees who do not allow public comment on certain evenings or will only take public comment on the topics that are on the agenda. That is not the case for me. So you are always welcome to come to EDC, and you are always welcome to come to our full council meeting and talk about anything you want at hand in brief. The last thing that I'll say is, I love that there's all this energy about this issue, and I heard a lot of people say, like, we have to do something. Like, I know people need housing, and it's so true. And so there's lots of ways for folks to get involved in this conversation. There's the Housing Greenfield group, the group that Pamela mentioned about Western Mass ending homelessness. There's like a mix. We're in this really difficult situation, right? Where, like, we need revenue in this town in order to meet our budget. And that comes from taxes, right? So more buildings mean more taxes. And we can't do it at the expense of the current citizens, but we have to make a pathway forward. I'm not saying this is the right pathway forward. I think we need to do diligence, like many of you said, when we move these things forward. And just for the sake of moving us forward, I think some of these issues got, like, lumped together. And so I don't want folks to think that the issues around campers or ADU are moving this month, because that is not the case. So you have time. It could only be a month. At the least, it's 1 month. So please come back again if these things remain on the agenda. And please, you are welcome to stay for our entire meeting if you would like to. But this concludes the public comment portion. If anyone who wants to go, you may leave now.
Thank you all for showing up. It really is a wonderful thing.
I know. Are you coming Winston?
Sweating to death.
Thank you.
It really depends. It really depends. It's reconfigured, and it's basically like, if you have a buildable lot, you can. Yeah, if you have a buildable lot, you could put a cluster development on it. But right now, like, it's already right next to it. Absolutely. Like, I own a buildable lot. That's already. But I want it right in it.
Howdy. How you been? Always busy, but,
Oh, yeah. Running around. Oh, boy,
And my
I was
next door
right.
neighbor in the one next to me is.
Yeah, I think-
builds it together all the time. And my neighbor and myself had a lot of. And we.
But the chief's son is like one of my.
Because I want.
So I get to see him after a long, long time. I was like, hey, the music's like, hey. He's like pulled parties together. I was like, wow.
Come to the meeting. Okay, we are still in session, so I'm gonna ask everyone, you are welcome to stay. If you do want to have a conversation, just please go further down the hall so that we can hear each other through this process. I am going to read the motion, that the only motion we have no public hearings open for tonight. We have order number FY 25-0110. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, section 39, open space cluster developments by adding language in bold and by deleting language in strike through as follows in attached exhibit A. And further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. And I do just want to make notation that exhibit A is the exhibit that is corrected and included in the version that was submitted on September 10th, 2024. I do not have to read the 9 pages of ordinances. I checked with the clerk's office. So I am going to open the floor for discussion. This is on the cluster developments only. And we have no counselors online. We're all here.
I forgot we were allowed to speak.
We're allowed to speak now. Yes, we are allowed to speak.
I mean, I have a couple of notes about the meeting we had with the planning board.
Yep.
That if it's helpful, I can go through what the major changes are according to Allison.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So this may be useful to folks.
We can't close the door during a public meeting, but actually I will ask folks to speak. If anyone wants to open a window and I'll turn the fan.
Those do open. Whoa, not like that.
Don't put me to sleep. It's been a long day.
There was
Yeah. 2 weeks ago. I've been, no, it's.
Okay,
A lot.
like, gonna get in trouble with the clerk. Okay, so you're gonna run us through the changes.
Yes, and again, Rachel, please correct me if I miss anything or then when you think needs to be noted. So we met with the planning board. When was that? Last week?
The 5th.
God, it's only last week. So we met with the planning board last week. It was officially their meeting. And basically they went through, or Allison Gage from the Franklin Regional Council of Governments went through a slideshow kind of explaining the history of cluster development changes in the city. So this has been a 2-year process apparently. And the city of Greenfield is working with Shelburne and Conway on this because all of these communities are in the watershed of the Deerfield River. So the intention here, and this whole thing is funded by the Department of Environmental Protection. So this is, the State Department of Environmental Protection is giving these 3 communities the money to try to protect the Deerfield River watershed. There's a climate change kind of mandate behind it as well for the state meeting its climate goals. And so that's kind of where this is coming from. There were 4 big changes to the pre-existing cluster development ordinance. The first change that I wrote down is we're going from a requirement of 25% open space to 50% open space. So that's a pretty significant change as far as the amount of land that needs to be preserved. The second piece is they changed the percentage of so there's some complications with this. As far as the amount of acres concerned, things like wetlands or a hill, you can't build on, but they can count towards the open space you're preserving. So the planning board decided to have more of that count than not towards being open space. So I think in the original regulations, like 50% of a hill could count towards open space, or I'm sorry, and now it's 90%. So you're rewarded for preserving land, even if it's not buildable. And that's a big shift they're making. That applies to wetlands, that applies to a whole bunch of things. And I imagine we'll probably go through the percentages because I know several folks, had ideas about that. I know Rachel had one as well. But the other piece is they added in these density bonuses. So this applies to, I didn't say where it applied to, but it's basically the areas outside of downtown is where the biggest changes are occurring. So in the rural residential area in particular, if we put this forward. So there's various density bonuses, meaning you can build more housing on a lot, and it could be with smaller frontages and closer together than would typically be allowed under the zoning, as long as those requirements for preserving land are met. Solar panels are one of them. Again, there's a whole list. And then one of the things I thought was really interesting is the Conservation Commission has they don't only have a say, they're the decider as far as if this development can go through, which is a really important detail. So this isn't just a developer comes in with a plan, it's the Conservation Commission has to sign off on it. So there's a check and a balance, for lack of a better phrase, from the folks concerned about open space, which makes sense because this is allegedly an open space ordinance. So that's really all I have on kind of the big changes. Anything that you can think of, Rachel? Or?
Yeah, I think that that's a great encapsulation. So thank you for that. And I do just want to emphasize, I think that a lot of people are sort of hearing this proposal as like, oh, they're trying to put in a bunch of new developments. The cluster development language is already on an ordinance in Greenfield. Like we already have language around cluster developments and what you have to do to get them permitted, all sorts of things. So that's not a change. Cluster developments right now have a process by which they can, be created in Greenfield. So what we're doing is, or what this, ordinance proposal wants to do is tweak that so that we can get more housing on the same amount of space potentially to help solve some of the housing issues, while also making sure that we really do protect open space.
So the change, in fact, is not, can we allow cluster development? The change is how clustered of that development would we allow? And this change is moving in the direction of making it more clustered than would be
And
allowed.
more open space.
And more open space.
So it increases the amount of units that can be built on a buildable lot. It still has to be a buildable lot. And it also increases the amount of open space that needs to be present for those units to be built. And it still has to go through, like it still has to meet all building codes. It has to go through the same permitting process. So if this was one of the big questions I saw in the meeting on the 5th, and I heard from constituents, it basically, the process that you would go through for a cluster development currently is the same as a subdivision process, and the subdivision process requires an abutters notice. And so abutters would have to be notified once that process is initiated, to say this process is moving forward. And then, you would have the same opportunity that's already built into the ordinance to, go to a meeting or what, there's usually a hearing date on the record for it.
But more of that open space, so there's more open space that is required.
Yeah.
But more of, the land still is there.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if this is right next to this, and now we're saying, okay, with this change, now these sunglasses are also going to be open space. So I can say, hey, we want more open space total, but now I'm just going to count something that wasn't even open space in like a few days ago is now going to be considered open space.
Right.
How is that more open space?
Yes.
In reality.
So, yes.
I have a very sophisticated visual representation that I drew in 2 seconds. This is circle represents land. The squares are housing. This is the current subdivision regulation. You have to have so many acres of land or so many feet of frontage, et cetera. And so what
to build a house.
To build a house.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to have water, sewer, et cetera. Cluster development could potentially allow something more like this, where the housing is all clustered here and the remaining land is open space. So it would basically be a denser, more sustainable form of development on that land, that much of which could already be developed.
But the part that's here, right, if this, for example, is considered, is not even considered open space, in this scenario, it would be.
Right.
You're not inventing more land,
No.
you're just randomly saying, oh, this part of land
This
is
is
now
land
open
that,
space.
land that could have been developed anyway. It changes the rules for how you're allowed to develop it.
But, okay, in your explanation, you were saying, hills and cliffs and places that are uninhabitable are now going to be, for people, are now going to be considered as open space.
90%.
So they.
More of it.
They were
can't-
open space
Open space.
before. They already are open space because they can't be built on. Like
Yeah.
that's, and so now we will be counting those toward the. open space
Exactly, therefore
requirement.
reducing the actual number of open space that's going to be there.
If you build any.
Not necessarily
necessarily.
reducing. I mean, it depends on, I mean, it's actually gonna depend on an individual basis whether or not, but the other thing is, can't you get a permit from DEP to like dig into a hillside and like disturb wetlands?
They did in Northampton for their,
I mean, I think I have a neighbor who did that. I'm pretty sure I have a neighbor who did that, who got a DEP permit and dug into a hillside. And it displaced all this water, and then like 5 of us had water issues. Sorry, there's someone in the waiting room. Oh.
What I'm understanding is that, let's say, okay, per table, right, this is a lot. Currently, what it is per table, you can only have 1 chair, right? Now you're saying actually per table, you can only have 1 chair, and we're going to increase the open space, but now we're gonna count the rest of the room as open space. The rest of the room was already there.
yeah, I mean, so you're saying that there's gonna be less open space if you build on it, basically. That's what you're saying?
Yes, because what you're counting now is stuff that was already there.
But
you're not clearing away more land.
the idea of this isn't to clear away more land to create new open space. It's if development is going to occur to allow it to happen denser, basically.
And it's only buildable lots. Like the thing is, this is not talking about space that has been like designated. I don't even know what we call it when
Like a farm trust.
Right, it's not like in conservation, or this is space, like I own a lot right next to my house that is a buildable lot. It has over 150 feet of road frontage. I pay taxes on it as a buildable lot so that at any point in my life, if I want to build a home on that lot, I'm able to. And I could go in right now and build a 3-family home on that lot if I wanted to.
Yeah.
By our current ordinance.
Exactly.
The only thing that this is allowing is that, like, I don't know this for sure about my tract of land, but it is on a gradual incline. And so maybe when I get my building plans, because it's regulated that it says it'll be by like a civil engineer or stamped by a civil engineer and someone else, they would say you can't build at this up here at this grade. It's too steep of a grade for you to build on, right? Normally, they would take the area that's buildable, and that's what would be calculated for your buildable area. And now what this ordinance is saying is that land that would not normally, the wetlands or hillside, that would not normally be in the calculation is allowable in the calculation. That's how I understand it.
Exactly.
I'm not understanding why you think that reduces.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you have a square, right? You have a square. Now, you're saying per this square, only 1 house can be built, right? So,
No, right now we say per that square, 3 houses.
okay, 3 houses can be built, but they have requirements to have open space.
Do we count
Right.
private land as open space in this conversation? Because I really kind of differ with that idea that somebody's yard counts as open space for everybody. Because that's, like if you.
I mean, so do they have, does all of those developments, do they have an open space requirement currently?
Only per lot.
Right.
Per lot.
They have a required lot size.
So
Yeah.
you could not, like, I couldn't subdivide my 1/2 acre lot into 3, like per our current law, like current ordinance. I could not subdivide my buildable lot into 3 lots and build 3 separate houses because those lots would be too small. They wouldn't meet regulation for a buildable lot. And so none of that is changing. All that's changing is that it's saying that that area that might have not been considered buildable is now going from, is it 30 to 50 or whatever, that percentage is changing. So it's like, I think where I'm having I'm having a disconnect is that what we're talking about isn't space that has been designated as open space in Greenfield. What we're talking about is buildable lots, in my mind, preferably owned by individuals or small
That
you know,
wouldn't happen.
companies, right, I know.
No way in hell.
I-
Who can afford a cluster development
Well, this is also.
as an
greater than-
actual resident?
It's greater than 5 acres, so 5 acres or higher. So did you see this map? We got some. These are not all the developable lots. Some of these are in agricultural preservation, but the light purple is what we're talking about. It's only these spots. And so
Yep.
this map is from FERPAG. They sent it to all of us after we requested a meeting. And this should probably end up in our packet for the full council if it isn't already. I don't
Is
know.
it not in here?
It's, because I think.
So
this
what
would be
is
useful
this,
for
what
everybody.
exactly is that saying?
So this is the light purple are the areas that potentially this new zoning change could affect. So you're really looking at stuff in the meadows, you're looking at stuff in North Greenfield, kind of on routes 5 and 10 here. And not all of those are likely to be developed. Some of them are in agricultural trust, some of them are preserved, but these are the ones that theoretically are not in permanent open space protections. So right now, those could turn into giant like McMansions and seriously, they could. If somebody wished to do it, that could happen. And so this gives people a better way, in my opinion.
I mean, they do. People have been building out there. We took over a road a year or two ago that had a couple buildings built on it and like, but this is like the other side of it of yes, I have concerns about who, like affordability and who's actually going to be able to build.
It'll be like BlackRock, it'll be like other giant conglomerates. Those are the only ones who can invest.
Maybe, although
necessarily.
we
Not
currently have a small design build firm who residents live in our town who are trying to build a 3-family right next to me. It's my literal next door neighbor.
Well,
And
they
they want
also
to,
have a community land trust that just bought a big parcel, like, as someone spoke to.
Yeah, but what is the cost of a 2x4? Do you know that? It's insane.
Yeah.
It is insane. We're doing home renovations 5 years ago, that would have cost maybe like $5,000. Now it's 15.
So
All of that is true, but that doesn't mean that people aren't doing it. I mean, we have.
So where's that money coming from?
well, the thing is
So you're talking about, we should be intellectually honest and say these would be private developers.
They wouldn't necessarily.
They would
No,
most
no.
likely be private developers.
I don't think that's.
Because who would, if we did a study of who in Greenfield has upwards of $100,000 just sitting in the bank to build a new house?
Well, how is your solution not to build something?
No, it would be to create a situation where you don't have a tenant landlord relationship. Because the only person who can do that right now are wealthy landlords.
Have you ever rented? Like, I mean.
yeah, I'm gonna rein us in a little
All right.
bit. I'm gonna rein us in. Like, I just want to say, I like the big vision here. Like, I love the big vision. Like, I would love it if our city was like, you know what we're gonna do? We are gonna give $20,000 down payment to families that make under $80,000 a year to buy a home for the first time and deal with some of the blighted homes that resident was speaking about, right? Like that type of incentive that actually like puts residents in homes. I love that idea.
And why can't we do that?
We
Look,
can, but
we can.
this is different. And so I mean, this is kind of the point, some of this is what I've actually been struggling with this is like, who does this benefit? What are the detriments? I can say personally, as someone who, there's a 3-family slated to be built on my property line where I have an acre of land in downtown Greenfield. It's a very small footprint of that property. I've emailed the builder and said, can I see a to scale drawing of what this would actually look like? I'm worried about parking. There's a lot of things and my neighbors had big concerns about it. Like people have visceral responses to this thing because I've lived in this house for 15 years. I've had no neighbor on that side I actually had a blighted house that then got taken for taxes and knocked down. But I've lived in that house for 15 years without a neighbor. And now I'm going to have potentially, 3 families on my property line. And I had a lot of neighbors who had concerns about that too. But I think the bottom line for me is there is a part of me that comes back to like, we need tax revenue. And so if a builder comes in, or I actually do, I agree with you, Councillor Gordon, that I think that it's not a decided that this is going to be like a big developer. There has been relationships that have been being built with the city, with community land trusts, with smaller design build firms that are looking at equity and percentage of affordability for citizens. And so I do think this opens an opportunity for potential for there to be building, which we need. Someone said something about like, there's not an immediate need, like there is an immediate need. I worked at Community Action doing emergency housing applications with people for 4 years, and I would close the door and there would be a family of 5 outside the front door in the winter. And like that person had no home and that person wanted a home. Like this wasn't a person who lived on the streets who like, you know, wasn't ever going to go into housing. If you offered that mom a home tomorrow, she would live in it if she could.
Why don't we, I mean, I just think it's unfair to say to that prospective family, okay, yes, sure, you'll be able to have the comfort of a home, but in this like crammed in like sardines, whereas I get to have a front yard and a backyard and 4 parking spaces. That's just unfair.
So no one is forcing anyone to live anywhere. You know, so if you don't want to live in a.
It's just the market, that's just the rules of the market.
My thing. So I chose to live in downtown Greenfield. I have very much not, I have like a 1/4 acre. On one side of me is a guy who uses his yard as basically a junkyard. On the other side of the guy who uses his yard basically as a junkyard. They're my neighbors. You know, I love them. You know, it's like they are people that I know. Do I choose to keep my yard in that condition? I do not. And I chose to live in downtown Greenfield. I grew up in Hatfield. Hatfield is a rural community in which the land is extremely valuable because there hasn't been any construction housing in decades. My grandfather was actually on the planning board in Hatfield when they decided to make it so you couldn't build on land. I think it was less than 4 acres initially, then they dropped it down to 2. And the price of a house in Hatfield on average is like $500,000. The town, and I now work in that town, and I couldn't afford to live in Hatfield if I wanted to. So when I moved to this community, I moved here from East Hampton. East Hampton's a lovely community. It is unaffordable and unreachable for anybody to stay there. I had a roommate. My roommate got a girlfriend, moved into an apartment with her in East Hampton because she's a nurse and he has a director of marketing. So you could afford an apartment in one of those old beautiful mill buildings. And I had to go. And Greenfield is a city that I was able to move to because it was affordable. And so.
And not live in a cluster development.
So listen, Wahab, come on, man. So I'm sorry to be sharp with you, but like, and I regret taking that time. But not everybody has to live in a cluster development. A cluster development is different than where I choose to live. If I had my druthers, none of the farmland that can't be replaced will be developed, period. However, I'm not everybody, and I'm not willing to make choices for people that prevent them from living in places they want to live. Some people may want to live surrounded by beautiful rural areas. It sounds like many of the people in this community do. And part of the nice thing about this, we already allow subdivision. You can't stop that. But this is a subdivision with what I would phrase conscience. You know, if you put a walking trail in there that's open to the public, you can build your units closer. If you don't want to live in one of those units, no one is making you.
But then people will live there.
Wait, hold on. I want to bring us back to like some semblance of order.
Yeah,
So.
again, I apologize for, getting heated.
And I
know you are heated as
No,
well.
I mean, I appreciate a spirited debate, and I also want to like keep us on time because we have 2 other things to discuss. But I appreciate what you're saying, and I do want to just add, there's this thing that's come up a few times for me of like this idea that like certain ways of living are like bad, and it's not just from you. Like I heard this a few times in public comment, and there was like these things of like the idea that like living in a trailer is somehow not something someone would want to do, or when there's trailer parks that are owned collectively by the residents who live there all over the country, and that's actually like a model for homeownership that's like really successful for low-income families. And when like a wealthy person owns a trailer and puts it in their yard, that's like not an eyesore. But when like I own a trailer, it's in my driveway, like it's always there. But so, and I want to just say, like when I moved to Greenfield, and maybe this is a little too personal, but I moved here on a voucher for homelessness. My family was on the verge of homelessness. We got a voucher. We did not live in Greenfield. We moved here. I'm literally one of those people that all you people talk about are getting shipped in here. I lived in Eastern Mass. I grew up in Quincy and Dorchester and East Boston. And I moved here with my 2-year-old and moved into low-income housing where I received a rental voucher. And it was a cluster development. And it was, you know, did I have a yard? No. Did I have someone literally cooking meth above me? Yes. And like, and I was so happy to have a home for me and my child. And I was able to, because of some of the programs that I think are like the bigger picture, like save money and buy a home, which is nearly impossible to do now. But I just think this idea that people wouldn't want to live in certain types of homes, like people in cities live in
Well,
apartments.
they absolutely would when there is no other option.
I want to
There
go
you
to
had-
Counselor Gordon because
Go
I
ahead.
do just want to say, I want to limit us to like another 15 minutes to discuss this topic. And if we can't get to a place where we feel like we can take a vote on this topic, we can table it. The grant that is attached to this does not, it was about the study. So it's not like this. Yeah, go ahead,
So
unless
one
there's
thing-
something timing wise.
There is. So Allison she is only grant funded to speak to us basically and hired to speak to us until this month is over.
Mhm.
So she would be able to speak to the full council.
Yeah.
But this is the last month she can do so.
Yeah, so it might benefit us to vote in no matter what and move it forward with a recommendation to table it at council floor or something, but I want to just keep us on the rails a little bit for timing tonight. So I'm going to give us 15 more minutes to discuss this topic, and I feel like you've been cut off.
Yeah, I want to similarly speak to this idea that everyone wants to live in the same kind of housing, because I think that's absolutely 100% inaccurate. Different kinds of housing appeal to different kinds of people, right? And it's not just because they can't afford this other thing, so they've convinced themselves that what is available to them is okay. No, some people want to live in a huge house on a huge lot where they can't see any other neighbors. Some people want to live in cluster developments, which can be very nice developments. They can be made, you know, very attractive, very sustainable, really lovely places to live. I think we're seeing an example of that happening on Stone Farm Lane in Greenfield. Some people want to rent. I know a number of people who are happy to be renters. Believe it or not, they would happily stay renters. We need to make renting safer, more affordable. We need to have more checks and balances on the quality of rentals available. But also the idea that everyone wants to own a home is inaccurate. And I want us to try to pull back from this idea that what we maybe have individually experienced as, you know, desirable in a place to live is everybody's experience. Because we're here to really represent, you know, the breadth of experience and desires that people have for living in Greenfield. And I think that the thing that appeals to me about this proposal is that, you know, we need more options of housing for all kinds. And this gives us more options while also not packing in developments, right? Like, and again, the houses will be closer together than right now they might be allowed to be if this were to go through and someone were to build on that land, which again, might actually never happen. A lot of people want to live close together in houses like that and have more open space available to them. Some people don't, and those people will, if they have means, you know, purchase other property and have nothing to do with something like this. So you know, what is exciting to me is that I think, you know, we've heard a lot of some ideas tonight. We're seeing a lot of ideas, including this one coming up in Greenfield, to give us the flexibility to be able to create more housing and more different kinds of housing options to meet the range of needs that we're seeing in Greenfield.
Thank you. One of the things that you said rings true is when someone was speaking, I wrote down, yeah, like one of the things we absolutely need, and I think this was brought up potentially in some meetings that I feel, or maybe I read that you had said it, Chuck, is that like we need a rental registry, we need an inspection, like, you know, like landlords should have to go through a process where their homes are inspected, there's an occupancy permit or something that is there, that they're inspected on a regular basis. Because we have apartments in Greenfield that are, you know, could be condemned, that people are actively living in and paying, you know, $1,400 for 2 bedrooms. Is there any?
Can I just say
Yeah, go ahead.
one more point to that?
Yeah.
So I think the thing there is that
I'm hearing some ideas tonight saying, we should not allow this because then people, won't be able to build crazy multifamilies and that are crappy rentals or something. We're solving for different problems there. And we can do this while also solving that problem, which is a separate problem, right? And we can create proposals and ordinances in Greenfield to solve for those which are already in process and being proposed, which I think is great. But I don't want us to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't want us to throw this out so that other problems that could be solved in other ways don't happen, because what we're doing there is also throwing out some really good ideas that could help us solve for housing problems.
And I'll just add, we also don't have, like, this isn't like where I grew up, where there is large developers who are like abutting a city, a big city, where they're ready right there to come in once these ordinances are changed and zoning is changed and build these huge high rises. The last home I lived in as a teenager just got turned in from a single family home into like an 8-unit condo. And I saw the picture of it. My brother sent it to me a couple of weeks ago and I was like, those neighbors must be pissed. Like, that was the first thing I said. I lived on this dead end street my whole life next to the quarries in Quincy. And now they have 8 units. And so I hear and see the fear that people have about this. And I actually think that where I've landed on this is that, like, we might not be fully there where this needs to be. And I would love for us to get to a place tonight where maybe we have a few more concrete suggestions. Like, is there actual pieces of this ordinance that people feel like are off or need to be tweaked, or where the percentages were not quite what we think are thoughtful enough? Because I think that will help us, when we get to council floor next week. And it will help us either way. We need some version of this, no matter what. Go for it.
Okay, so this is my thing. I think, and I mean no offense by saying this, it is very important for people, and the room today exemplifies, it's very important for our legislators and our representatives to actually go out in the community, talk to people. What we do is we read a few articles and think, oh my God, I'm now Richard Dawkins or whatever. Like, I know everything. Like, no, go and talk to people. One of the reasons why this room is so heated and so many people feel like their land is being taken away, the town that they grew up in is changing drastically, going down a downward spiral, is because people didn't bother to go out and talk to people. If you actually do that, I mean, honestly, how can you say people want to rent rather than own?
It's
Rent is.
My dad doesn't want to own
Renting
a
in
house
Greenfield is
anymore. He
horrifying. Are you familiar with the real estate companies that are here? They are a land mafia, and we've been dealing with them for decades and decades and decades. And their great grandfathers owned those places, and we're still under them, and we will continue to be under them. And this specific legislation, what that will do is give them more power to go ahead and build more horrible, disgusting rental units rather than giving someone a chance to actually own a home. There's vacant homes in this place, many of them that are just abandoned. And there's nothing else that we can come up with other than, oh, okay, I just don't understand how you can say people want to rent. Like, have you talked to the renters in Greenfield? I just had to file a petition with a guy at the health department because his landlord owns like 15 properties in Greenfield, and the health department dare not go in to his place that has black mold because that guy is big and powerful. Many of the people that are appointed are because he appointed them. And we have nothing to say to that. We have no contextualization of what we mean. We need housing, obviously. But this way in which we're glorifying renting, I mean, that's insane. One of my biggest points when I was running my campaign was we don't want a community of renters, we want a community of homeowners. And I won with a landslide. And I literally, if you just go talk to anyone, hey, would you rather rent your home or would you rather own a home? They'd be like, I want to own a home. Why do most of us own our homes?
I'm gonna bring us back. We have a comment, but please don't leave comments in the chat box, but you can please email us your comments if we've said anything here that you would like to respond to. I agree with a lot of what you said, Counselor. Respectfully, I've like talked to my neighbors a lot about this for many years, actually. And there is a lot of people who want to rent. I know many people at this point who would rather rent and not be responsible for the things around homeownership, or who are older and no longer can care for their yards or do that type of maintenance. I mean, I think about it all the time. I have an acre of land that I'm the only one who weeds. I want to like lose my mind on my children every summer. But I'm like, I'm not going to be able to live here for my whole life because the yard's too big. And at some point, I'm going to have to say, I can't do this. And so there's many reasons people want to rent. And I think that is actually a really valuable market. Renters pay taxes just like everybody else pays taxes, and landlords pass that tax on to the renters, as we know. And I 100% agree with you that we have some really terrible landlords in town. We have some really difficult folks who own multiple properties. If you look in GIS at some of the folks who hold the most property in town, I actually don't think that those people are the people who are going to be building cluster developments here. I don't think they have the desire or the capital. So yeah, I'll go to you, Counselor Garrett, and I'm going to we have 5 more minutes on this topic.
You really said most of what I was going to say, frankly. And, just a personal anecdote, like I rented from a terrible landlord in this town. The water pipe burst and he decided to put a regular garden hose attached to another building he owned and pump water into our house. And I tried to call the health department. It was like, and then he texted me like, did you call the health department? Like a threat. And it was bad. It was really, really bad. And, so I'm not going to pretend that rent, like I was accused, she called me a pimp for tenancy earlier, And so like, I am not that person. But I am somebody who had to rent because I couldn't afford to live other places. And now I own a home, and I'm extremely privileged to do so because I happen to get into a relationship with somebody who's economically stable. On your point of, do you ever talk to anybody in town? Yes. It may not just be the same people you talk to. I did speak with Mr. Norman back there, when he wrote a letter to the paper about ADUs, basically throwing grandmothers into the gutter or something. And it was a great conversation, and it was respectful, and I appreciated it because I want to talk to people that disagree with me. All the folks in this room, that was fabulous. Like seriously, it was great to hear even voices that I wouldn't necessarily agree with, especially because I don't often hear all of them. So, we want to know what the community wants, and we have a duty as public servants to do what the community both needs and what they desire. If the city doesn't want to do something, as elected officials, we shouldn't do it. But there isn't just a single chorus of Greenfield that is just speaking in an upper class homeowner accent. There are lots of people that do not show up to public meetings. And one of the things I always think about is how many people that could live in a housing unit that's built never will show up to a meeting because they don't live in town yet. And I know that's like that outsiders coming in and taking our housing thing. I moved here from East Hampton. I grew up in the Valley. Am I an outsider? Should I not be here? Am I taking a house that a Greenfield resident should be living in? What's the metric? You know what I mean? It's just like a community is a group of people that choose to be together. And that's what we are. And again, the passion here is beautiful. And again, I really appreciate the conversation because you care. But there's not just one voice of Greenfield. There are many different voices, and most of them aren't heard. That's.
Yeah.
Nice to everything also. I totally agree with everything Councilor Garrett just said. And I also want to add and have us think a little bit about folks who may not want to pursue homeownership for other reasons, disability, age, temporary employment, there are all sorts of reasons. Owning a house is an enormous responsibility. I took it on. I'm very, very privileged to have been able to buy my home. Couldn't, as someone said earlier, similarly, I could definitely not afford my house now. I got very lucky timing wise also. And it's a lot more work than even I realized, and I knew it would be a lot of work, right? And there are people who are physically not able to do that for, financially not able to do that for all of those reasons. And for other reasons, they may just not want to own a home. So I think that when we talk about everyone should be able to own a home and we think everyone wants to, it's not true for accessibility reasons also. I think that we should keep that in mind. And actually to that point, I would propose an amendment to this. Similar to what, based on what Susan Orgafnik was saying, that, there's some great incentives in here, on page 26. And I would like to add an incentive, that the OSCD, allocates at least, I don't know exactly what language to use for this, sorry, I should have thought of it. But basically to have at least 10% of any development be designed by universal design, according to universal design standards, so that it's accessible to people with physical and other disabilities. So I think, let's see, what would the language be?
Well, what I'm gonna do is ask you to draft that amendment and send it to us so that it can be changed in here for the Wednesday meeting.
Okay.
And then.
So we don't vote on that tonight?
I don't think we really just need to vote on a recommendation.
Okay.
This whole thing's going as
Because
it
this
is.
whole thing is going as it is. So we just need to vote, we need to vote on our recommendation for moving for the council tonight. When it gets to council floor, you can have a beautifully written amendment that we introduce at the very beginning to say we're adding this amendment. But for tonight, we just, and that is actually the type of thing that I would love us in this, the last few minutes that we wrap up this discussion, is there other areas, specific areas that we want to bring forward before this comes to council floor for a discussion? Because I think that the thoughtfulness of this specific ordinance, and I will say, I read through it and I was really, what's the word, critical of this. I didn't know if I was going to be in support of this when this first came across my inbox last month. And I am in support of this at this point in time. And I think that there's some tweaks that need to be done. And I was hoping Derek was going to be here because of his knowledge around building code. But does anyone else have anything specific that they would like to see tweaked before it gets to council floor?
Remember who said it, but somebody asked about the 5 acres piece. Was it you, Rachel? No, maybe it was one of the public commenters. They were asking, would it be, maybe, I think it might have been Susan, making it so you could have denser development if there's open space preserve on less land. I don't have a specific number, and 5 acres I think was kept because it was what was previously there. It would definitely change that map I was, showing you earlier, Rob, just with the parcels that would be available to be developed differently. I can imagine a property, like where you live, Marianne, with woods contiguous with it, right? You could preserve that land and be a bonus.
Yeah.
I think that would be a desirable outcome. And in some ways, honestly, better than building a 5 acre subdivision.
Yeah.
To let density happen,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if we want to play around with a number. I don't want to make a decision based on just vibes, 2 acres sounds good, So I'm not really willing to say formally unless you guys have strong feelings about it. But I thought that was a valid idea. I think that's maybe it's something to come up with. Think about again when we talk at some future point about dimensional regulations and, setbacks and the like.
It might be something worth asking Allison too. Does she have a recommendation before this comes to the floor if there was to be an amendment around that?
Maybe I'll write a note to try to ask that question.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
All right. I realize I'm cutting our debate here shy, potentially. Although to be 100% honest, this is the type of thing that I just think is going to have so much debate on council floor that it doesn't really matter what we decide tonight. That they're not going to take our recommendation and who knows what's going to happen. So there's part of me that's us debating this any longer is not efficient because we're going to re-debate it next week anyways.
Yeah, I think Allison's presentation will be the deciding factor, honestly, the way she explains it.
Yeah.
So We need to vote.
We need to vote to move this forward. Yeah, so I will, I don't think I have to read the order again, but I am gonna say, like, I'm gonna go, I'll read us through and just say all in favor of amending the zoning ordinance.
How about we read the motion itself? I think.
This?
Just this, yeah, not like the 9 pages, but.
No, this is their motion. This is our motion, which I read at the
Oh, sorry,
beginning.
that's what I mean.
I'll reread the motion for order number FY 25-010. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, section 39, open space cluster development by adding language in bold and by deleting language in strike through as follows in attached exhibit A, and further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in a compliance with the numbering format of the Code of Conduct of Greenfield. And exhibit A is the document that was forwarded in this current agenda on September 10th, 2024. When this gets to council floor, it'll need 2/3 vote, which is 9 votes in the affirmative. But for now, I am going to go through, and a vote yes would be a positive recommendation. A vote no would be a negative recommendation. Counselor Garrett,
Yes.
Counselor Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Minhas.
No.
Okay. And I am actually going to abstain from this vote because I am just not.
If you abstain, does that still move forward?
No matter what, it moved forward, and we just say that in the recommendation. So I'm going to abstain from voting because I'm not sold on the ordinance as is at the moment. And I want to hear the debate on council floor before I make a decision.
Fiery.
It was going to be fiery. Okay, so
That's a better one.
moving on. I do just want to be like, we've been here 2 hours. Does anyone need like a 3-minute break?
I could use a 8-hour nap, but.
I can't do that for you.
I use like a 3-minute break.
Yeah, we'll do a 3-minute break. 8:05, we'll come back. I am gonna call us back to order at 8:09 PM.
Well, need for.
Yeah. Okay. We have two things on our discussion. Does this proposed zoning amendments mean the ADU zoning
So
amendments?
there's a list on page 33, that's listed of 6 of them, 4 of which are actually written. So, well, that's not entirely true. One has nothing to do with housing, and Eric threw it into it because he thought it was a good idea, and I haven't talked to him about it. So that's kind of what's in there.
Okay, so this we are just having a discussion on.
Would it be helpful for me to talk through them?
Yeah, give us what you got.
Okay. I know that folks in the digital world can't see them, but it is on page 33 of our packet for this Economic Development Committee meeting. So there are, basically the origin of all of this is I sit on this Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee, and which is an advisory committee charged with implementing the master plan. These all come from the master plan. So that's the basic idea. I sit on this committee, they have a lot of great ideas, and I basically put into committee chairs in July requests to discuss, not even like, it wasn't even written yet, there was nothing written at that point, but the 5 ideas that are the first, the zoning amendments here. President Bottomley asked me to speak to Eric Tuareg to find out what he was thinking about it and to get his input. I did. Eric was very enthusiastic about seeing these moving forward. And he offered to introduce them to the planning board and to write them, for which I was really grateful because he is the expert in the subject. And again, he knows how to write this. And I kind of figured that if he introduced the planning board, it would make it easier to make some progress on the housing issues we're having. So the first one I actually think is going to be, believe it or not, incredibly uncontroversial. And I'm not saying that with any sarcasm whatsoever, because I think it might have been an oversight. On the zoning map in the semi-residential district, for some reason, multifamily dwellings are by special permit, unlike any other residential district in the city where they're as of right. So just for folks that know, as of right doesn't mean you can build it and nobody can do anything about it. You still have to follow the zoning code. Special permit is another process with extra steps. You have to get permission from the planning board. It's more expensive and it causes people to frankly build less. And so if our goal is to build more housing, allowing multifamily housing as of right is a decision that the city council made. Marianne, is 2000? Is that about right? Last big zoning sweep?
2000, I think it was, yeah. I was gonna say, someone said to me the other day, it was about 20 years ago.
Yeah, so there was a lot of, and we have actually frankly pretty darn good zoning as far as allowing people to build housing, you know, compared to many other communities. This is just taking, there's 2 neighborhoods, one up by Chapman, kind of near the Salvation Army, and then one near Franklin Street. Is that right? Where this, I could pull up the map. I might actually have it. That doesn't matter.
In our precinct, in precinct
No, I think
5?
it's in Sheila's precinct. I think it's north. But in
Okay.
any case, it's north of Main Street, east of routes 5 and 10, you know, whatever that section is called, and High Street. So that there's like a little tiny neighborhood there where it's not allowed of right. This would change that and make it as of right. And I think, you know, that's a fairly minor change. So there's a zoning table, and then on page 35, there's another one. And this one is part of what I would argue needs to be a larger discussion about, again, the dimensions of buildings and kind of heights of buildings and lot sizes and step backs. But this is the first step to it. So what this one does is it changes the number of units allowed per building. Right now, we have a hard limit on 24 units per building. And, you know, I had a conversation with Susan Wargaftig the other day where she talked about how nobody's building any, you can't get subsidies from the state for affordable housing if it's less than about 20 units. And so most developers, and I can't remember the woman's name from Rural Development Inc. mentioned in Housing Greenfield yesterday, that it's really unaffordable to build affordable housing at smaller scale, which makes it undoable, you know, impossible to do. So increase the number of units allowed per building would change, you know, that equation to some degree. Eric also suggested, let's see, he changed the number of entrances that one entrance can be, you know, a number of units served by one entrance from 6 to 10. That's basically because it's a moderate change versus being a really major change. And so this is, again, just allowing more units per building. It's not going to be as big of a change as if we change like the height of buildings allowed and otherwise. But this is a step towards basically what I would call legalizing downtown. We can't build like a downtown block building right now because of our zoning, and allowing more units in a building allows more development like downtown. I would love to see downtown extend, so, but this one is, has an accessibility kind of purpose behind it, which I actually failed to mention yesterday when I talked to Housing Greenfield, to my regret. But it would change it so mixed use lots. So let's, talk about downtown again. You've got, downtown block building. Front is going to be retail because that's the highest traffic street. So the language is first floor dwelling units shall not be allowed on the street side with the highest traffic use. So you wouldn't be able to take something that could be rented out as a storefront for a business and turn it into housing, but you could put a little tiny apartment or something, not tiny necessarily, but an apartment in the back or even a condo, right? If we're talking about wanting owners versus renters. And so that would be really helpful for folks with accessibility, because one of the big barriers to building accessible housing, especially in a downtown block building, is a requirement to have an elevator, which are wicked expensive, like to the point where they make projects unfeasible. So we can even build any units that are accessible for folks by allowing like a back entrance to a first floor structure to be turned into housing in a mixed use district that would allow people to live downtown who might be mobility impaired or something like that, or the elderly, for example, could benefit from this. So I really like this one. I think it's an elegant solution, especially like retaining the commercial space in the front.
That point, I think, was one, we got an email from Anna Altman, who's
Yes,
the ADA coordinator.
That's where it's coming from.
Yeah,
All
and
credit to Anna.
was she recommending that one be switched to allow like first floor dwellings even within units that would like have that storefront, or was she just saying like what you're saying, like a backdoor entrance?
She was
Okay.
She was talking about this.
Okay, great.
And so then the next one is not controversial at all, fortunately, which is about allowing detached accessory dwelling units as of right in every zone of Greenfield. And it's going to sail right through, no problem.
That was sarcasm.
It's deeply sarcastic. Yeah.
Anthony, that's sarcasm.
So one of the things that kind of drives me nuts about this is not nuts. That's not the right way to, that's not the positive tone I should take. The state government just passed a housing bill that basically forced single family zoning to allow ADUs as of right. There's a question if that means any district that allows single family housing at all has to allow ADUs as of right, which means again, without a special permit, or if because Greenfield allows multifamily zoning in every district, do we have to do this in order to legalize it? I would argue, even if it's the second and the state made an oversight in their housing bill, we should do the letter of the law, the spirit of the law and not the letter. We have a housing crisis. ADUs have been shown in many cities to actually make a difference in the increase in the price of housing. Not everyone's gonna be able to build an ADU, but this is definitely a tool that can slow down the rate of housing increases. It's not going to solve the housing crisis, and I'm not going to try to pretend to folks that it will. I've gotten emails from folks about this more than anything else, and I probably got 25 emails when it first was in the paper, and I got 3 that were against it, and they were all people that I've had conversations with since then, and they will never change their minds on the issue. Or maybe that's not true. That's again, not to be pessimistic. So it's more popular than I actually anticipated. I thought there'd be a lot more pushback, but it is very much possible that somebody, there was a gentleman who emailed me about his severely disabled son who is not able to live independently. And this is a person with enough privilege that they could afford the high cost of ADU to allow that adult son to no longer rent an apartment, but to live with them and be caretaken by this family. And, there was a number of stories like that. That's the one that really hit me more than anything else. I also just, again, not to make my personal anecdotes the driving factor of this, but I have a neighbor who's got a garage that's directly behind my house. I think about this ordinance if it passes. Could my neighbor, he would have to figure out how to get the water from collapsing the garage first, but could he build an ADU in that garage? And the answer is yes. And would I be okay with a person's door right by my back door? And I have to say, yes, I can live with that. And it's one of those things where I really understand. If I look at this falling down garage and I say, do I want somebody looking out their window at my back door? No, I also have a house where my driveway is here and my neighbor's windows are here. And again, I chose to live in this neighborhood. So again, I don't want to be accused of hypocrisy, I guess, but again, it could make a difference. And obviously it is very controversial. Susan mentioned the idea of notifying folks, regardless of if, they can actually do something. It's possible folks to make a friendly amendment. I honestly kind of like the idea of making it so folks do get a chance to hear when something is happening.
Well, so I had that question today when I was doing some research, and so what I found, and I wish we had someone from the building department or planning here that could answer this affirmatively, but is that, so basically, if something was gonna be built that was, that conflicts with current
Oh, yes.
building bylaws or zoning, that would take into effect. So like when we put an addition on our house, and I actually thought my property line was less than 8 or 10 feet. I can't remember what the number is exactly, but I went to the board and notified my neighbors and did the whole thing. So for your situation, right? Like if your neighbor is within 6 feet of your property line or whatever,
Yes.
your neighbor, you would have to be notified because that's within the current code.
Right.
That if you're building within that allotment. So I think the answer is sometimes. If a neighbor was going to be building, they would be notified, but not all the time.
Yeah, and so I guess part of the reason I brought up that story about my neighbor with the garage behind me is I absolutely 100%, if I could wave a magic wand and that became like a tree or a pond or something that I thought was pretty, a flower garden, I would, because I am a person who likes to have nice things around me. And we have a housing crisis, and we have a situation where I chose to live on a property where there's this neighbor who has a garage that could possibly be developed into an ADU. Not everyone's in that case. And the fact is, most people are going to say no to something they're uncomfortable with if they're given the choice. And that's a really significant thing. And it's part of and that's what's caused the housing crisis. We had folks talking about Boston. Boston is a beautiful city with beautiful neighborhoods. And you know what's right by the Green Line in Newton? Golf courses. Because the people that live there don't want to build dense housing, and they're getting sued by the state because they're resisting things that make them uncomfortable because they don't want to change their neighborhood and they want to have a say in how their neighborhoods are structured. The problem is it doesn't give anyone who doesn't already have means a voice at all. It privileges those who already have stuff. So I've got mine. I have a house. It's great. I love it. I love being able to walk to downtown. An ADU is something that allows people a foothold in a community that they want to be a part of. And I think that's a really valuable thing. So, yeah.
Just a clarifying question. In your example, the garage behind you could be turned into an ADU, under this proposal without a special permit, but would still require planning board,
definitely
site plan review and approval.
Yes.
And if I'm
So
wrong-
I want that to be clear
Yes,
too,
thank you.
because
I
it's not that suddenly everyone can build ADUs. I know it's been said already here
Right.
before, but I think it can't be repeated and emphasized too often, that there would still be
Yeah.
site plan review and approval by the planning board required for
And no, I
those kinds
agree.
of.
And the other thing that brings up too is the dimensional regulations and the setbacks don't change. So let's say this garage is too close to my property line to fit within the current zoning regulations, it can't be an ADU.
Well, then they can apply for a special permit.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yes.
And then and so then there's notification, there's a community debate. Oh,
Just like there is now.
right, exactly.
Right.
So if they, so it's not, just to use the example Al was mentioning earlier about his yard being a tiny yard and there not being room for an ADU. He might be right. There may not be room on his yard according to the current zoning regulations. That's worth looking into and thinking about. Again, we need to have a larger conversation about setbacks and density and how close things can be built together. But this change specifically doesn't change any of that. It doesn't allow you to build an ADU on somebody's property line because you're not allowed to do that anyway. So part of the thing that I think is important with this is it's not shoving an ADU down someone's throat right on their property line and there's going to be, somebody looking out the window at your house. It's not a huge shift. It is a big shift though. And so again, that the state is pushing anyway.
Yeah, so there's two pieces here for me. One is that The state has already passed this, like you said, there's some clarification that is needed on how implementation of this will go down. But so we don't actually have the right now to say like, we're not going to allow ADUs in Greenfield. What we do have is the ability to say, here's the restrictions, here's the process that we're going to require people to go through to build an ADU. And so that is specifically what this ordinance is looking at. The other piece I lost, so it doesn't matter because it's 8:30.
Sure, it was a good, and it will come
Thank
up by
you.
next Wednesday.
Thank you. Oh, and I'm gonna give us 10 more minutes for this one because we still have a presentation and one more topic. But this one we do not have to vote on, so it's, yeah.
I would love to know what you guys, so part of the reason I want to bring this is to hear what folks thought about it. So I genuinely, and there's one more, which will be really quick because it's not written yet. Legalizing basically buildings, what the lady yesterday called these simple buildings is apparently the technical language, where you can have building attached to another one where two separate owners own different sections of the building. Again, legalizing downtown is the way I would phrase it. You can't right currently now build two buildings next to each other and have it be owned by separate people. Right, so, yeah.
I will just say in general.
That's maybe not entirely, that may be. a bit of a-
Yeah, go ahead, you go first.
Okay. Philosophically, my position is that the regulations we have are there to encourage quality. And the process of democracy, the process of multiple boards, the process of permits can seem cumbersome, but it's there to ensure that there's multiple sets of eyes, people with qualifications looking at whatever development is happening. I respect the special permit process. Now, it may be difficult, but I don't think the special permit is the real reason why there aren't a bunch of ADUs around. The real reason why there aren't a bunch of ADUs around is because the people can't afford to do that. A regular person who owns a home can't really afford to do that.
But the state has now said we can't require a special permit process. It's by right? ADUs are by right?
It's unclear. So the language in the housing bond bill says single family.
So then this
zones.
is useless.
Well, it's.
Well, no, what we get to
don't know.
do, I think either way, what we get to do is decide what we are going to attach to an ordinance around ADUs in our city. And so we can't, I think they're gonna say, we can't require a special permit process. It's by right.
I think that determination is probably yet to be made. That could be most definitely the case. That could be true.
Mhm.
But that's still my opinion on special permits still remains the same for that. And also the state is not, like God Almighty, Western Mass does not look like Eastern Mass. And this is very different. Greenfield is a very unique place where we're not completely out there like Coleraine, but we're also not like Cambridge or something.
It's true, but state law does apply.
Can I finish my point?
Yep.
Okay. So that second thing is a question. Does it require, would this thing that you're proposing require that the ADU be owner occupied? So what does that lead to?
You're gonna argue at least BlackRock coming in and eating up all our housing in town.
Exactly. So what happens right now is you have somebody who owns, a bunch of different properties in Greenfield. They see, okay, right now I have two rental incomes coming in, one for 1,800 from the top, 2,200 from the bottom, and they got a nice, beautiful yard. Well, screw that. That family doesn't deserve to have a garden or play space. What I can do now is without any special permit, I can just go in and build another tiny little lot, a nice little shack, and that's another $800 in my pocket. Now, the average person cannot afford to have an ADU. That's just the reality.
Let me know.
The main issue with ADUs and the main hurdle to having ADUs or attempting to solve the housing crisis is not the fact that there's a special permit attached to it. You can apply for a special permit. That's fine. It's not like, oh, it's illegal. It is perfectly legal. You can absolutely have an ADU right now.
Okay,
But
hold
you
on. I
can't-
just want to stop us here because I'm just like reading the legislation. So the new policy replaces a patchwork of zoning regulations across the state with a uniform law that allows homeowners on single-family lots to add these small units without needing a special permit or variance unless they want to add more than one. Each ADU construct has to be smaller than 900 square feet and is still subject to local building codes. And so
That's for single family. Specific.
this legislation relates to single family only. The Healy Driscoll administration estimates that between 8,000 and 10,000 ADUs will be built across the state over the next 5 years due to the passage of this law. So what we have control over is the building codes and ordinance related to ADUs. We do not have control over, like, what they're changing is the state zoning law that requires the need for a special permit or a variance on single family lots. And so, which is what I thought. I just want to say, Counselor Minhas, like, the reason, like, special permits, as someone who thought I had to apply for one when I built an addition on my house, that's still not finished. My husband's watching. But
it's
maybe he
expensive.
wants to finish it. But it is a burden. It is a burden. And I'm saying that as, like, my husband built our entire addition with his literal hands. He did not hire another person to help him. And so we are a family who could afford to buy the building materials and he could build that addition. And it was a burden to be like, oh my God, now we have to wait a month and wait and go to this meeting and tell all our neighbors and talk, like, which we already talking to our neighbors, but it is a burden when a developer comes in and they can't and I'm not talking about BlackRock, right? Like, I'm talking about, like, what's Oxbow, right? The local one that is building energy efficient, affordable housing units in our town or wants to. That is why the state is saying we're going to relinquish the special permit process. Do I think that we should have, like, no process whatsoever so that people who have yards like Al Norman says he has can just populate their yards with ADUs and not have, and like infringe on people's quality of life? Absolutely not. Where I struggle with the ADU issue as a whole, and there was some zoning changes that happened a couple years ago, right before I came on city council, and they were kind of like, they were minimal and they were slated as like affordable housing. And I actually don't see how, like, I think you said when you were going through the beginning, like, that ADUs somehow like slow down the cost of housing.
I can explain that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that'll be useful for us to discuss more because I think there's different locations where housing markets work differently. And I wonder if ours is a housing market where that happens. And I totally agree with you. Like, I don't want people to come in, and I think Al Norman said this, and be able to build an ADU and rent it on Airbnb or build, like, I think.
But this doesn't address that at all, which is one of my
But that would be addressed within a different ordinance. That would be addressed within an ordinance that would, I believe, go to appointments and ordinances because it would not be under zoning. And so 100%, I think that we do this all the time in city council. If we pass an ADU zoning change with building codes and all of those things attached to it, we need to make sure that it goes hand in hand with an occupancy certificate, a certificate of renter, whatever we're calling it. And we've needed for a while now, like, something to address that Airbnb. We can definitely pass an ordinance, or hopefully we can write an ordinance. We could definitely write an ordinance that says, if you have an ADU, you must be owner occupied within the home that's, attached to the ADU. and it cannot be rented for short-term rental less than 90 days or something like that. There's webinars now and guidance specifically for Massachusetts on like how municipalities can preserve long-term rental units for citizens. And like there's sample code out there that's great. I went to a webinar on it last year. Okay, Rachel, do you have anything you would like to add to this discussion?
I think a lot of things have already been said. I appreciate all the work that Councilor Garrett has put into all of this with Director Twarg and others. And in general, I would just say that I am in favor of these changes. I think we need more multifamily housing in Greenfield. Let's make it a little bit easier to build that. We definitely need more affordable housing, and we need to be able to attract that. And we definitely need more accessible housing. So widening our options for all of those things, to me, is just a win. I absolutely agree that we need to and can and should create other proposals around things like Airbnbs, you know, to make sure that the housing we create is actually lived in and not just rented out to tourists. We love tourists too. We have a hotel. But, you know, in general, like honestly, one of the last things I'm concerned about is big developers coming into Greenfield. They are not coming to communities like this. In some ways, that's one of the challenges we face. At the MMA conference in January, I went to a session specifically about this. And it's really, as someone I think said earlier, it's really only affordable housing developers who are coming to communities, especially out in Western Mass, and even trying to do development, or community land trusts and other, you know, small scale, locally based developers. And even for them, you know, they need it to be easier than it is right now for them to create more housing in Greenfield. So, you know, I don't actually think that these are major changes. I honestly think that the big fuss about ADUs, while there certainly are some valid concerns, I think it's a little bit of a straw man. I don't think that it's going to bring in this huge tidal wave of problems and ADUs and you know, whatever else the concerns are, and the concerns that are valid, you know, we definitely need to deal with and can propose things to deal with that. But we need more housing. Let's make it a little easier to create housing.
Yep.
So the only thing I just wanted to mention is the question about how could this affect the affordability of housing? So one of the things that Chuck is going to say to us in a bit is talking about the inelastic demand for housing. And that's an economics phrase that basically just means people need a place to live. You have no choice. And the beautiful position we're actually in Greenfield is more people want to live here that can afford to live here. And that is ultimately a very good thing for the city. Kind of just zooming out, because I teach history and I can't help it. This is a community that used to be extremely rich. Used to be. And then the factory shut down. And this is a story that's been repeated over the entire country as we disinvested from manufacturing and property values plummeted. We're now in a position where people are moving back to cities. The economy is doing better in spite of lots of issues. And so we're in this really unique position where we haven't built enough housing, talking about the other part of supply and demand, in the last 60 years, like basically. Like we've been in a position where really after the gas crisis in the 70s, housing construction slowed down tremendously, and it was mostly built in suburban areas that we frankly don't live in. And that housing had a huge collapse in 2008 because it built way too much housing in the deserts in Arizona. And then because of that, developers didn't build housing since then. If you look at like this housing study, we should all go to this, everybody in this room, on Thursday, because they have a lot of data about this. One of the things they show is, you know, how many permits have been issued for new housing. One thing you were 100% correct about, the cost of construction is the main issue. Part of it is, you know, price of lumber, the new building codes that are more energy efficient, better for the people living in them, more expensive to build up front. Do we go back and have a leaky house that just puts everybody's, you know, natural gas money into the air? I don't think we can afford to do that for the climate or for the individuals living in those homes. So we're kind of stuck with high construction costs in a lot of ways. All of this is intended to deal with market demand for housing by increasing the supply of housing. It's going to be marginal. And like when I say marginal, it's going to take a long time to build, and we have to do more than this to solve the problem. I don't think these are big changes either. And there is a lot, but the thing that people fear is fair when something could potentially negatively impact you permanently. And I get that. I don't mean any disrespect to anybody who's in the room concerned about anything, because, you know, they're, to be honest, they're telling the truth about the things they're thinking about, and I appreciate that. But this is, again, we have a supply issue, and again, the last thing I will say, when people are given the opportunity to say no, history has shown us they say no. And that's the whole concept of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Most people will be NIMBYs, including me, including you, everybody, if it's easiest to do so. Again, do I want my neighbor to build an ADU in the garage? No. Should they be able to? Yes. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, it's the, you know, the public good needs, everyone needs a place to live. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need food, water, shelter. And that's fundamental before you can achieve anything else, including buying your own home. And if it be it a rental unit rented out by, you know, some landlord in Springfield who doesn't live here, sure. If it's BlackRock that owns the ADU, that would be terrible. And maybe we should do a house, you know, an ordinance prohibiting that sort of thing, but it's a different issue, as Councilor Bullock was saying. And the, you know, the short-term rental thing, I would love to just ban Airbnbs. Maybe that's crazy. Maybe I just, you know, said a radical thing. I don't know. You know, but I would. I think that they're a parasitic organization. And that would, you know, address some of these concerns. So.
And they can, I'm gonna bring us back, and I'm actually gonna end this
It
discussion.
was cut off like 4
Okay,
times. I didn't even get to like finish I wrote points, but it's okay.
I'll
We can just
I'll give
discuss
you
this at the full council.
Well, no, this won't come to full council. So this won't come to full council. We have many more hours to discuss this in this committee together. So we don't have, it won't come to council floor this month or probably next month. So, but what we do have the opportunity to do, I think, is decide over the next few weeks, what other ordinances would we need to travel with this in order to make it something that could pass and that is what is relevant for our city. And so I would be happy to work with someone on an Airbnb ordinance and introduce it to appointments and ordinances, because I think that the only way that I can really feel good about ADUs in our city is that if it does have some things attached about like owner occupancy or rental stipulations, that sort of thing. And I'm happy to give you a minute, Councilor Minhas, if you want it.
No, I mean, all I'd like to say is, I mean, this whole issue is not completely new. We've had a history of this.
This has come up.
And locally, the people who push for this behind the scenes are people who are the land mafias here, who see that, oh, there's 2 rental incomes, screw it, now I can get 3 at the detriment of the poor renters who have no choice. And can I?
Yeah, you finish, yeah.
Because I've been like cut off like every single time, and I make it a principle where I don't cut off anyone.
I'm
But
sorry, you cut off several people in the previous conversation.
Okay, I apologize.
I just need to
apologize.
point that out with all due respect. Please go on.
the reason we have these regulations is to ensure quality. No one is saying ADUs shouldn't be allowed. That's not even legal. You can't even do that. The point is, we want to ensure that the people who would live in an ADU have access to sanitation, water, all of those things. The current infrastructure is not one that supports the renters, is not one that gives them a social safety net or an economic safety net. It is up to the homeowner, the landlord, the slumlord to decide whatever they want to do with their property. And what this does is make it easier for that landlord, that slumlord, to make another fast buck. And I don't agree with that.
Potentially, I agree potentially, but what I will just say before we move on to this next one is like, when you say this, like the land mafia, the slumlords, the whatever, those folks in Greenfield, and I say this as someone who has, you know, called for the resignation of certain people on certain boards who are building illegal units within other units to create third apartments where it's only a 2-family dwelling. Like those type of things do happen. Those people, they're not pulling building permits. they're not legally creating a permitted infrastructure, like, and like hooking it, they're not hooking it in to a third city line where they're paying, you know, to do that. What they're doing is running a pipe illegally from the second floor to the attic and redoing that attic with no permit and not paying the taxes, the, you know, not having a reassessed value, like the land mafias, which, I mean, I love the name. They're not the ones who are legally building dwellings up to code. You know, like that's the, it's, I don't, from looking at building permits and from.
You're entitled to your opinion.
Yeah, I just don't think it's the same people. I don't think the folks, I think, you know, I mean, I got a call about a well-known landlord in town from the Mass State Police last week. So like our landlords, are there many landlords in town who are making poor decisions about how they run their businesses? Absolutely. And there is landlords who I know who are owner occupied, who have, I mean, I own my father's house, right? It's a 2-family. He lives on one side and we rent the other side to a family. I'm a landlord. I own his house. He's an elderly man. He's going to kill me if he listens to this, on a fixed income. And, you know, that's the reality. And I care deeply. Like, you know, my tenant knows, I'm like, do you need help hanging a shelf? Call us, we'll help you. Like, I care deeply about my investment in that property. And so I think that a lot of the folks that we have trouble with in Greenfield, and I think there's ordinances that can address those things. And I don't necessarily think we need to like make it harder, but we do need enforcement. So, right, I think the type of thing of having an occupancy permit that's Board of Health goes in every 2 years and inspects a rental property, right? And you have to have an occupancy permit to rent your unit out. That sort of thing is necessary. And those things can travel so that we don't have the situations you're talking about. Okay, I am going to bring us to our last topic of the evening. And Chuck Green, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to give your presentation to us. And then I actually think what I am going to do is I am going to hold us on this discussion. So we'll get the presentation tonight, and then we will adjourn, and our discussion will be on next month's meeting. Yeah.
I guess I have one small note. Eric told me the planning board's gonna be talking about this, which I think is worth mentioning. Just these items.
About campers?
No. The
Oh.
stuff that we just.
About the ADU?
About the ADUs and the other 4 items.
Okay, great.
So that will be coming up in October. I think I may have already discussed, but.
Yeah, and we will discuss it. This will no matter what be on the agenda next month.
I went to join in. I'd like to share for people online, but if you can't, that's okay.
You know what? I can't because I don't have that kind of plug. I'm sorry.
What kind of plug is it?
I have a stupid
I'm
Mac
in
that
the
only has the lightning.
You could put me in the meeting and I could never.
Oh, are you waiting?
Yeah.
Oh, I will happily admit you to the meeting.
Is it going to let me share?
I will see if I have the capability to give you that. Hold on, I might have the ability to do it though.
There goes my 10 minutes. While we're.
I haven't started your 10 minutes, don't worry.
Let me just say, I love Greenfield. I lived here 5 years now. It's the best place I've ever lived in my life. I love this community. I love my house. I love my neighborhood. And I love it for the open space and the people who like open space. I've lived in suburbs and I hate them. This place is great. I apologize for being a naive, unmindful engineer. I don't know anything about municipal government or about real estate, any of this. I simply wanted to find a way to solve the worst problem other than climate change any of us have ever seen. And despite what people say, there are hundreds. There was a census, over 250 unhoused people and many, many hundreds more underhoused or in what Susan called fragile housing, one incident away. And I'm an engineer. I was like, what can we do about this? And you know what? We will never be able to build houses for everyone. We will never be able to build apartments for everyone. We will never be able to build ADUs for everyone. There's just not enough money. Even if there was, there's not enough contractors. It is not going to happen. And that's why, as an engineer, I said, what do you do? There's only going to be more and more people, despite what some people have said. There's not going to be less people. There's only going to be more. How is there any way to solve this? And as an engineer, I said, well, if you can't build them, you'll bring them in. And I looked into modular housing and trailer parks, and those are all crazy expensive, even those. So that's where I came upon, what about campers? And they're not great. First off, they'd be used. A brand new RV costs as much as a house. So they would be junky, old, used ones. And you know what? As people said, there's already people living in them. And there will be, because it's better than a tent. And so I was like, well, what can we do? How can we make that better? And one thing we can do is make it so that people aren't threatened and unsafe and stigmatized. They're going to be in them anyway, just like the people in tents. The worst thing that we can do is make that illegal, which it already is, and take people who are already in the worst time of their lives and make it so that if anyone doesn't like them or wants to victimize them, like the landlords you were talking about, or anyone else, all they have to do is call somebody and they lose every possession they ever had, whatever they had left. So that's terrible. Well, okay, but on the other side, everyone's right. I don't want to have a pile of sewage right next to my house. Nobody wants that. That's terrible. That makes it, now I'm in just as bad a situation as they are. So what can we do? Well, there's not much we can do.
You have screen sharing capabilities.
Wow. All right, well, I'll rush through it since everybody knows all this stuff anyway at this point. You know, I really apologize. I feel like I'm wasting everyone's time by even proposing this. I feel really naive. I thought people would be interested in what could we do, but that's okay.
I will just say, like, I appreciate you bringing this idea forward. And I think that what, if anything, from the public comment that we got tonight, like, we need more ideas. And so I appreciate that. There's places across the country where there is like sanctioned and monitored encampments like this. And so you're not like so far gone that this is like totally off the deep end. And I have concerns, so. But I do appreciate the thoughtfulness and you bringing this idea to the table.
Well, and just let me be clear. No one has to do anything. No one has to have a trailer on their lot.
No.
That nice lady who actually came to one of my Ask the Assessors and I helped her understand about her property values. I never would have wanted her to feel threatened that somebody would put a trailer on her land that she can barely afford. I feel terrible about that. And I wish there was some way we could be more clear and say, please, don't worry, we're not going to hurt you. Anyway.
Okay.
So all this first slide stuff, we already talked about that. Oh, by the way, as an engineer, I believe in economics to some extent, some economic things. And we'll have one of the things you talked about, we're never going to solve this problem with these landlords, with any landlords, if there's no competition for housing. Right now, the demand is so inelastic that if you're a landlord, you can do anything you want. Until we have more apartments than there are people who want them, we're going to have that problem. So that's the problem we have to work on. We just need lots more. If we could spend a few dollars and like have 1,000-unit apartment buildings dropped in 3 places in town. So all of a sudden there's 3,000 apartments. You wouldn't believe how fast rents would drop. And you wouldn't believe there would not be a single person living in a bad apartment. There'd be 100 others to choose from. So really, this is the core issue. We just need more. So despite what some folks said, oh, the population it's facts are facts. We need more. And everyone should come to that thing on Thursday for sure. Let the light shine in and let the facts be here. Okay, there's a lot of stuff here. This is all pretty obvious, but one of the things I'd like to say is if you can give a person a place to live and an address, then they can get a job. They can get documents. They can get healthcare. If you don't have an address, you can't get those things. And then the problem just goes on and on. That would help all of us economically if we could help more of these people be part of our society and not just try and push them away. And so there's lots of reasons I already heard in the housing greenfield. There's lots of reasons why people don't want this. Again, our existing encampments are worse. People can dispose of trash legally if they have this kind of thing. We could do that. I had a lot of proposals about ways that this could be improved. We could say you can only have one or whatever, depending on the size of your property, how many could there be here? No, we should not allow people to run engines all night long, although people already do that, and that's a bad thing for climate change, for noise. So there's a lot of things we could do, permitting. One thing I'd like to separate is this issue of utilities. It's amazing. Every single comment mentions sewage. Sewage is everyone's favorite topic. I don't know how that happened. My one friend who did live in a camper, he used a composting toilet. It was fine, but that's everyone. Nobody wants sewage anywhere near them. I think that's, if anyone wants to
Like,
work on
where do
it.
people think people are going to the bathroom now?
That's what I think. I mean, all these unhoused people, they still have to go to the bathroom. Where's that happening?
Yeah. But yeah, they go out the river.
So if anything, we, as a community, we have to figure out how to get rid of everyone's sewage. It's like step one. Close to, how do we put a roof over people's head that isn't nylon? Anyway, so I'd like to separate this issue of utilities, and one concept is if private landowners want to let people use the bathroom in their own house, isn't that up to them? Right? And so it's not like we have to provide sewage and water and power to every possible place that people could live, because if someone's going to, be okay with you living on their land, well, maybe they're okay with you using their bathroom. I mean, can you prevent somebody from using a room in your house? Anyway, I would think, I want to see the outpouring of people saying, it's my house, it's my land. Why can't I do what I want on my land? And we hear it's a community, so you don't want people building that ADU right next to you, but it's definitely a voice or a direction. So I see now, this is not a simple solution. The engineering of, well, let's just bring the houses in. And if we can't build them, are there any already built that we can bring in? It's apparent that nobody wants that, or maybe no one here wanted that. And I apologize if I wasted everyone's time with it. But that's all I have to say.
I'd just like to say, I don't think you have to, regardless of how I feel on it or how anyone feels on it, you don't have to apologize for the fact that you took out time. I mean, how many of people in the community, everyone loves to bitch, and I'm sorry, but everyone loves to do that. But how many people actually go ahead and write this out, propose this, and bring it to us? So I want to thank you for that, despite how I feel about it, despite all my concerns about it. And I just want to thank you for your compassion for a real, actual issue. So thank you.
Thanks.
There's a piece about this of like, that I keep thinking when people are like, we need answers, but like, this isn't it, right? And I'm like, we are quite literally leaving people behind. Like, I'd come from an organizing background. I worked in criminal justice for many years. And like, one of the things, like the tenets of the work that I held very close to myself is that we don't leave people behind. And there is, I mean, like you're saying, like, go talk to your neighbors, go talk to like where I walk. There's two places where I walk my dogs, where there is people who regularly park their campers there. And I speak to them probably 3 times a week, and they move around, but they live in their campers. And so like, this already exists. And what I appreciate is the idea that we could like have some type of regulation that would make it sanctioned, right? Like this feels very much so. I don't know if you lived in town then, but like some years ago when Mayor Martin was in office, there was a big sweep of encampments that happened, and they, kicked everybody out. And so then everybody just came to the common and camped on the common. Did you live here then?
I did.
And
It was
so-
one of the- when I first moved in here, that was the big story. And Yeah, it was interesting.
And so we tried, I was working in community action at the time, we tried to get him to put a porta potty on next to the common. And he would not do it. Like the city would not put a porta potty on the common. And which was so stupid. Like anyone who appreciates public health would put a porta potty on the common. You go to other countries, other places in the world, they have public toilets. And so, you know, this is an issue that we are leaving people behind where, like you're saying, that there's, you know, you call someone in their entire livelihood or maybe what they have left of their entire livelihood because they've already lost their home or they've already, you know, whatever, and is now gone. Yeah, so I am actually happy to put this on the agenda for us to have a deeper discussion next month about it. And maybe there is some like key points that could come out of this that like could support the people that we have in town who need this to.
Point of order.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There is, can you turn that down? There's
I
a
don't-
language proposal on zoning that was not discussed but is embedded in the packet. Could you discuss that as to why it's embedded in that proposal?
Stephanie, I did mention it. Eric put it in there and it is about, I think medical labs, and I genuinely don't know what the start of that was. And frankly, it's number 7 at the list.
Is that related to the ADU issue?
It's underneath. So there's the.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Go watch it.
There's the.
Yeah, have fun.
And then underneath, I mentioned a couple of times actually that this is something that Eric put in there. I haven't had a chance to discuss with them his thinking next to it.
Changing a zone next to me, requiring.
yes.
permits,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
sent
so-
an
I'm-
email.
Sorry, Stephanie, I really appreciate you using the process, but I can't take public input at this point. But that is not moving forward tonight, so that will absolutely be discussed in depth at the next EDC meeting. With the whole ADU package will be discussed more in depth. And so, and I appreciate you bringing it up because I would like to get clarification on why that's attached to ADUs as well. And I do appreciate you using the process. It was like the first, I was like, can a citizen use a point of order? So yes, so I appreciate you bringing this forward and I will absolutely put this on the agenda for next time. I don't think it's a waste of time for us to have a 20-minute discussion about this. And is there points that can be useful in moving this forward?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate you putting humanity at the center of all of this. These are human beings. And
Yeah.
make it clear that you know that and that's what you're afraid about. And
I hate the idea that if you just don't like someone, you can call somebody and have them, you know, thrown away.
Yeah.
It's just terrible.
yeah, there, but as Pamela said, there, but for the grace of God, go I, right?
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like really, we're so lucky.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say
Thanks for running on the meeting.
related?
Keeping us in check.
Related to the, I know, I apologize. I know I cut people off.
No, it was helpful.
And I do try to run a meeting with some rails on it. And we did go 3 hours. I feel like we did diligence tonight.
Sorry.
No, you're not at fault for that. You were maybe the most timely one of all. You didn't even use half your time there, Chuck. I timed you. Our next meeting will be October 8th, 2024 at 6 PM in this room, City Hall Meeting Room, 2nd floor. It will also be hybrid on Zoom unless otherwise posted. You will be able to find that link on the greenfieldmass.gov website along with the full packet. I have requested that our full packet be attached to the meeting, which it often is and should be. I will happily take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And this meeting is closed at 9:04 PM.
Ooh,
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for sticking it out.
you guys.